I was just a small office worker, yet I was chosen by the city's richest tycoon, who wanted to marry his precious daughter to me, just when everyone thought I was about to get a promotion, a raise, marry a rich beauty, and reach the peak of life. The bride suddenly ran away right before the wedding, claiming she couldn't accept an arranged marriage. She left me standing alone in the chapel, covering my face in silence. All the guests looked at me with sympathetic eyes, assuming I was crying in heartbreak, but in fact, I was only trying to hide the grin tugging at the corners of my lips. Neither the tycoon's daughter nor her father ever imagined that I had already foreseen the runaway bride, and I never even intended to go through with this marriage. The next moment, I took advantage of the chaos to run away, and in a flash, I cashed out the billion-worth marital house that my father-in-law had given me. A life of being rich, single, and free from being anyone's workhorse was about to begin. Chapter 1. Mr. Wong, please stop pulling at your tie. It's already perfect. For the third time, the makeup artist slapped my hand away, her eyes full of the same helplessness one has when dealing with a stubborn golden retriever. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, black tuxedo, carefully styled hair, even nails trimmed smooth and rounded. The perfect image of a groom, if you ignored the beads of sweat on my forehead and the twitch in my left eye. You don't think she'll suddenly change her mind, do you? I asked for the nth time. The makeup artist rolled her eyes. Mr. Wong, the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. If Miss Lu were going to run away, she would have already. Her words were cut short by an urgent knock at the door. My best man, my college roommate Luis, rushed in, his face paler than his shirt. George, something's wrong. He swallowed hard. The bride, she's gone. The can of hairspray in the makeup artist's hand clattered to the floor. I pulled out my phone. A message from Willow glared back at me. George, I'm sorry. I can't accept an arranged marriage. Don't look for me. I wish you happiness. I looked up at Luis. When did she run off? The makeup artist said Miss Lu went to touch up her makeup 10 minutes ago, and never came back. Her best friend Maria's car is missing too. I took a deep breath. From the banquet hall, I could already hear the murmurs of more than 300 guests, every one of them a political or business elite, at Pablo Lu's 9-figure dream wedding. And now the bride had vanished. Does Pablo know yet? Luis nodded. He's furious. He sent every bodyguard to look for her. Hotel cameras show Willow left through the fire escape. Maria picked her up in the underground garage. I couldn't help but laugh. That was so like Willow. Even her runaway was meticulously planned. George, are you okay? Luis asked worriedly. I stood, adjusted the tie that didn't need adjusting, and said, never been better. Pulling out my phone, I dialed a number I had saved but never called. Manager Wu. Yes, it's me. George. The Orange Grove mansion. Yes, the wedding house. I've decided to sell. Full payment. As fast as possible. Hanging up, I glanced at the stunned Luis and the makeup artist. What? She can run away, but I can't. From the banquet hall came the faint roar of Pablo. Lock down every exit in the city. Pull the security footage. I want to know where that ungrateful daughter went. I patted Luis's shoulder. Cover for me. Just tell them I'm devastated and need to be alone. Where are you going? To follow in my bride's footsteps. I winked. But first, I had to turn my mother-in-law's gift mansion into cash. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a real estate agent's office, signing the sales contract. The Orange Grove estate, worth tens of millions, had been a wedding gift from Willow's mother, but it was in my name. In hindsight, my would-be mother-in-law truly had foresight. Mr. Wong, are you sure you want a full cash sale? The market value, 10% discount. As long as the money clears today. I cut him off, my phone buzzing nonstop with missed calls from Pablo and the wedding planner. 2 hours later, I walked into the high-speed rail station carrying a light travel bag, smiling at the freshly deposited sum in my mobile banking app. I couldn't help but feel satisfied. Willow probably thought she was the only winner in this farce, but she was wrong. I bought the next southbound train ticket, destination chosen at random. Before boarding, I sent Pablo a text. Dear father-in-law, I'll handle the wedding house properly. Please give me some time to calm down. Then I shut off my phone, pulled out the SIM card, and tossed it into the trash. As the train pulled out, I gazed at the city skyline shrinking in the distance, a wave of relief washing over me. This arranged marriage was never what I wanted, but refusing directly would have offended the business giant Pablo. Now, with the bride bolting first, I, the victim, had the perfect excuse to ditch the hot potato. Perfect. Willow, thank you, I whispered to the window. You did for me what I wanted but never dared to do myself. I wondered where she was now, how she was doing, but it didn't matter. I had a hunch we'd meet again soon. After all, I had secretly installed a tracker on her phone, on the day I fixed it for her. Chapter 2. The tires thumped over a speed bump, jolting Willow awake. Her forehead nearly smacked against the car window. Where are we now? She rubbed her eyes, her throat dry as if filled with sand. Clearwater Town. Maria kept one hand on the wheel while handing over a bottle of mineral water with the other. You were sleeping like a dead pig. I almost thought you'd taken sleeping pills. Willow twisted open the cap and gulped down half the bottle before she felt alive again. Outside, the scenery had shifted from concrete and steel to lush, green forest. In the distance, a few low buildings loomed faintly through the morning mist. You're sure this place is safe? Willow rolled down the window. Damp air rushed in, carrying the smell of soil and grass. Maria rolled her eyes. Please. This place is so remote Google Maps can't even be bothered to mark it properly. If your dad's bodyguards manage to find it, I'll live stream myself eating a keyboard. The car turned into a narrow lane and stopped in front of a 3-story building. The sign reading White Cloud Inn was faded, and an elderly lady sat at the entrance, eyes half shut, basking in the sun. ID card, Maria said, extending her hand. Willow pulled one from her wallet and passed it over. Freya, who's that? That's you now. Maria waved the card. She's my cousin, went abroad, borrowing her identity for you. Remember, you're a poor woman who escaped from domestic abuse. Don't slip up. Willow opened her mouth, but in the end said nothing. A battered victim of domestic violence was far more inconspicuous than a runaway heiress. At check-in, the old lady's gaze lingered on Willow's face for a few seconds. Young lady, by yourself? MHM. Willow lowered her head and stared at her shoes. Room 302, South Side. Good sunlight. The lady handed over a brass key. $80 a day, $1,500 for a month. The room was cleaner than expected, light green wallpaper, wooden floors, a single bed, and even a small balcony. Willow tossed her backpack onto the bed and collapsed into the wicker chair by the window. How does freedom feel? Maria leaned against the doorframe with a mischievous grin. Willow closed her eyes. Sunlight through her eyelids left a warm, red glow. Quieter than I imagined. Quiet. Maria pulled out her phone. Your dad is practically turning City A upside down. On the screen, Pablo stood at the wedding venue, face dark as he spoke to reporters. My daughter has been kidnapped. The police are already investigating. Willow almost fell off the chair. Kidnapped. Smart, right? Maria arched her brows in pride. This way the police will help you stay hidden, and your dad's business rivals will really believe you've been abducted. Double insurance. Maria, you're a genius. Willow said sincerely. Nope. I just watched a few more episodes of Criminal Minds than you. Maria fished out a stack of cash from her pocket. $5,000. Use it sparingly. I'll come back next week. Willow accepted the money, her nose stinging. Thank you. Don't get sentimental. Maria waved it off. Oh, and guess what's happening with your fiancé? Willow frowned. George? What about him? He disappeared right from the wedding. Maria scrolled through her phone. Your dad told everyone he was heartbroken and needed time to recover. But according to my bestie's cousin's friend, he put the wedding house on the market that same day. What? Willow's eyes widened. The Orange Grove estate? Yup. 10% below market price. Full cash priority. Maria whistled. Looks like your little groom isn't as harmless as he seemed. Willow stepped onto the balcony and took a deep breath. George selling the house. That was the last thing she expected. In her mind, George had always been obedient and compliant. The kind of kid who never went west when Pablo told him to go east. How much did he get? Who knows? Enough to live comfortably for a while. Maria glanced at her watch. I've got to go. Any later and your dad will start suspecting me. After seeing Maria off, Willow lay on the bed in a daze. Her phone was shut off and stuffed in a drawer, her link to the past completely severed. The feeling was strange, as if she'd been thrown into a parallel universe. Her stomach growled. Only then did Willow remember she hadn't eaten in nearly 24 hours. Pulling on a baseball cap and a mask, she decided to take a walk into town. Clearwater Town was busier than expected. Narrow streets were lined with crowded little shops, vegetable stalls, cobblers, hardware stores, and a few small eateries. Willow chose a rice noodle shop that looked the cleanest and ordered a bowl of beef noodles. You're not from around here, are you, miss? The lady boss asked while cooking the noodles. Willow nodded. I came to visit relatives. A guest of Granny Lou's. The woman smiled knowingly. Not many young folks stay at her place. The beef noodles were surprisingly delicious. Willow devoured the bowl and even asked for another. At checkout, the boss refused to accept payment for the second bowl no matter what. The woman patted Willow's hand. Girl, you're so skinny, eat more. Come by often. Walking out of the noodle shop, Willow's eyes burned. In City A, no one cared whether she ate enough. They only cared whether she wore the right clothes, the right jewelry, and whether she could bring glory to the Lou family at banquets. She wandered around the town, buying daily necessities and some fresh clothes. Passing a cafe with a job posting taped to the window, she stopped. Part-time help, 15 yuan per hour. Willow touched the shrinking wad of cash in her pocket and pushed the door open. At the same time, in the most prestigious law firm in City A, Pablo slammed a stack of documents onto the table. Find out everything for me. Who did that brat sell the house to? And where did the money go? The lawyer wiped his sweat. Mr. Liu, The transaction was legal. The property was registered under George's name. He has full disposal rights. Bullshit. Pablo slammed the desk with his fist. That house was paid for with my wife's money. But the gift contract clearly states. I don't care what the contract says. Pablo snatched up his phone. Get me the bank president, now. 5 minutes later, Pablo hung up. His face dark. Freeze all of Willow's accounts. Bank cards, credit lines, funds, everything. Let's see how long she lasts out there. Mr. Liu, isn't that a bit? And another thing. Pablo cut him off. Hire the best private investigator. Offer a 1 million reward, alive or dead. I want her found. When the office was finally empty, Pablo opened a drawer and took out a photo. In it, Willow wore a graduation gown, smiling brightly. His fingers traced his daughter's face, before he suddenly slammed the picture face down on the desk. The phone rang again. His wife. Pablo took a deep breath before answering. Lou, are you insane? Half the business community attended Willow's wedding, and now she's gone. How am I supposed to explain this? Tell them she's sick. Pablo rubbed his temples. Sick. Mrs. Zhang saw George run out of the wedding with her own eyes. The entire circle is saying Willow eloped. Pablo's temples throbbed. That brat George, I won't let him get away with this. Spare me. His wife sneered. I told you long ago that boy wasn't as simple as he looked. You wouldn't believe me. Now look, you've lost both your daughter and the house. What do you mean? I just found out George consulted immigration lawyers 3 months ago. She sighed. He never intended to marry Willow. He was just waiting for the right chance to run. Pablo's face turned ashen. You mean, he used our Willow? Of course. What else did you think? Not everyone is desperate for your so-called fortune. After hanging up, Pablo stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring down at the glittering city lights. For the first time, he felt everything was slipping completely out of his control. 2 weeks later, at the cafe in Clearwater Town, Freya, latte for table 3. Willow quickly frothed the milk, pulling a lopsided little heart on top. Back in City A, all the coffee she drank came from imported estate beans. 1 cup cost more than she now made in a whole day. Yet here she was, already able to tell the difference between instant coffee and freshly ground beans. You're learning fast, girl. The owner, Sam, took the cup and nodded with satisfaction. Willow smiled and went back to wiping down the espresso machine. The past 2 weeks had been the most fulfilling of her life. She worked at the cafe from 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, spent the evenings in the town library reading, and returned at night to watch melodramatic soap operas on the old TV in her room. No banquets, no socializing, no carefully arranged coincidences set up by Pablo. Money was tight, but every penny was earned by her own hands. Freya, grind tomorrow's beans before you leave, Sam said as he polished glasses. It's the weekend tomorrow, lots of customers. Willow nodded, then hesitated. Uncle Sam, could I get an advance on my pay? Sam raised an eyebrow. Short on money? Yeah. I want to buy a second-hand phone. Willow lied. In truth, the money Maria had given her was almost gone, and the inn's monthly fee was due next week. Sam counted out 500 yuan from the register. Take this first. If it's not enough, let me know. Willow thanked him gratefully. After work, instead of returning to the inn, she went to the town's internet cafe. Booting up a dusty computer, she logged into her webmail with the account she knew by heart. No new messages. Biting her lip, she opened a news site and searched for the Liu Corporation. The latest update was from 3 days ago, Pablo attending a charity event. Not a single mention of his daughter's disappearance. She hesitated, then searched George. Only a handful of reports came up, all from the wedding day, saying the groom was devastated by the bride's disappearance and was unavailable for comment. Good acting, Willow muttered, closing the page. By the time she left the internet cafe, it was dark. Taking a shortcut through an alley, she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. She quickened her pace. The footsteps quickened too. Her heart pounded in her throat. Clearwater Town was supposed to be safe, but still. Freya. A strange male voice came from behind. Willow froze and slowly turned. A man in a black trench coat stood in the shadows, his face hidden. You've got the wrong person. Willow lowered her voice, stepping back cautiously. Is that so? The man chuckled. Then, Miss Willow, shall we talk? Her blood ran cold. She spun to run, but a hand grabbed her wrist. Let go of me. Relax. The man released her hand and pulled out an ID. Private investigator. Hired by your father. Willow stared at the card for 3 seconds before suddenly laughing. My dad hired a third-rate detective like you. Guess he's not too desperate to find me after all. The detective pocketed the ID. Miss Liu, your father offered $1 million for your return, but I think you and I could strike a different deal. What kind of deal? You give me 100,000, and I'll tell you George's whereabouts. He lowered his voice. I know you hate him. He ruined your wedding and sold your family's house. Willow almost laughed aloud. Why would I want to know where he is? For revenge. Of course, the detective said matter-of-factly. From what I've learned, George didn't leave heartbroken at all. He planned it. Several key clients of your father's company recently received anonymous emails full of dirt on Lou Corporation. Willow froze. What do you mean? I mean, the detective leaned closer. Your runaway wedding was exactly what George needed. He used you to create chaos, took the chance to hit the Lou Corporation, and walked away with the house money to enjoy his freedom. Standing under the streetlight, Willow felt the world spin around her. George, that quiet, obedient George who had always seemed so meek in front of her, could he have orchestrated everything? Where's the evidence? The detective pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. On the screen, George was sitting in a cafe, talking with a middle-aged man. The timestamp was 1 week before the wedding. Who is that? Lou Corporation's biggest rival, Bai Yuntao. The detective slid the phone back into his pocket. So, what do you think? 100,000, and I'll give you all the files. Willow took a deep breath. I don't have that kind of money. You can figure something out. He handed her a business card. 3 days from now, I'll come find you again. As the detective disappeared into the night, Willow's legs went weak. She had to lean against the wall to stay upright. All this time, she had believed she was the one steering this farce, never realizing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria popped up. Emergency. Your dad froze all your accounts and has people watching me. I can't come next week. Take care of yourself. Willow shoved the phone back into her pocket, a harsh truth dawning on her. She was truly, completely on her own now. Chapter 3. Freya. Table 3 ordered a pour-over. You give it a try. Sam's voice rang from the cafe front hall. Willow wiped the water from her hands and hurried out of the kitchen. This was the first time she was allowed to make a pour-over for a customer, though she had secretly been practicing in the back for half a month. Yirgachev. Medium-light roast. Sam handed her the beans and lowered his voice. The guest at table 3 knows his stuff. Don't mess this up. Willow nodded. Taking a deep breath, she ground the beans and began pouring water with as much professionalism as she could muster. Water at 92 degrees. Bloom for 30 seconds. Then 3 pours to fill. Nice technique. A low male voice sounded behind her. Willow's hand trembled, spilling hot water along the rim of the dripper. That voice was too familiar, so familiar she still heard it in her dreams every night. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. She slowly raised her eyes, gaze moving up from polished leather shoes to long legs in a perfectly tailored casual suit, and finally, to the face she had thought she would never have to see again. George. He was standing there in the flesh, a faint smile tugging at his lips, his eyes as clear as if this were nothing more than an accidental encounter at a friend's gathering. You. Willow's throat tightened. She almost blurted out, what are you doing here? I'm David. Surname Chan. Just moved to Clearwater Town recently. George extended his hand politely. Willow stared at those long, bony fingers, her mind racing. What was he playing at? Pretending not to know her, or did he really not recognize her? After all, she had no makeup on, wore only the cafe apron, and had her hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Freya, what are you spacing out for? Sam called from behind the counter. Snapping back to reality, Willow hurriedly shook George's hand. Why? Freya. Miss Freya's pour-over technique is very professional. George nodded slightly. Where did you learn? Online videos. Willow stammered, quickly lowering her head to resume pouring. Damn it, her performance right now was a disaster. George made no move to leave. Instead, he leaned casually against the bar, watching her with interest. Willow could feel his gaze sweeping over her face, probing, dissecting, as if it were X-ray vision. Mr. Chan, are you here in Clearwater for tourism? She forced herself to sound calm, trying to regain the initiative. Something like that. George smiled, escaping the noise of the city. You know how it is. Willow nearly knocked over the dripper. Was that a hint? The coffee was ready. She quickly set the cup on a tray, preparing to deliver it to table 3. I'll take it. George naturally lifted the tray. As the host, it's only right to serve a lady. Willow could only watch as he walked toward table 3, his upright figure like a poplar tree. The host. What kind of riddle was he speaking in? Freya, don't just stand there. Go wash the cups in the kitchen. Sam's voice pulled her back to reality. Willow fled into the kitchen, shut the door, and leaned against the wall, gasping for air. This couldn't be coincidence. Clearwater Town was more than 200 kilometers from City A. There was no way George had just happened to show up at the cafe where she worked. And the way he behaved, far too strange. Like he was acting. The sink was piled high with dirty cups and dishes. Willow turned on the tap mechanically. She needed to calm down, to think clearly. George pretending not to know her. Even changing his name to David, that was a clumsy disguise. Unless he had a plan. Ah. Willow cried out as hot water splashed onto her hand. She quickly turned off the tap and looked at the reddening skin on the back of her hand, when suddenly a more terrifying thought struck her. If George could find her, then didn't that mean her father's private detectives could too? Freya, we're swamped out here. Sam's shout from the front interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Willow took a deep breath and retied her apron. Whatever George's purpose was, she couldn't afford to panic. If he wanted to pretend to be a stranger, then she would play along. For the next few hours, Willow forced herself to focus on work, deliberately avoiding the area where George sat. But the cafe was too small. She could feel his gaze following her wherever she went. Worse yet, the guest at table 3, a goateed old gentleman, seemed to hit it off with George immediately, the two of them chatting away like old friends. That Mr. Chan seems like a decent fellow. At 3 in the afternoon, after the rush had passed, Sam wiped glasses as he spoke. An architect from Shanghai says he wants to open a studio here in town. Willow nearly wrung the rag in her hands apart. He told you that? Yeah, just signed a lease for that empty old villa on Old Street. 3 years. Sam poured her a glass of lemon water. Why? Do you two know each other? No. Willow quickly took the glass, gulping down a mouthful. He just looked familiar. He's never been to Clearwater before. Sam chuckled. Freya, don't tell me you've taken a liking to him. Willow choked on the water, coughing violently. Like him? George? The fiancé she had run away from? The ex-architect who might be plotting revenge against her whole family? I'm taking out the trash. She grabbed the bucket full of coffee grounds and hurried out the back door. The alley was damp and quiet. Willow dumped the trash into a large bin and took several deep breaths to calm her racing heart. She had to figure out George's true purpose, but directly confronting him was clearly unwise. Need a hand. Willow spun around. George was standing barely 2 meters away, holding a black long-handled umbrella. The sunset cast a golden edge around his silhouette, making him look like a figure stepping out of a painting. No need. She instinctively stepped back, only to bump against the cold brick wall. George didn't come closer. He only tilted the umbrella lightly in his hand. It's going to rain. The forecast didn't say anything about rain. In the mountains, the weather is unpredictable. George glanced up at the sky. Just like life, full of surprises. Willow narrowed her eyes. For example, George's gaze settled on her face. Meeting someone in a strange place who feels strangely familiar. Her heartbeat quickened. Is that so? What kind of person? Someone who, George seemed to weigh his words. Someone who disappeared without saying goodbye. Just then, a deep roll of thunder cracked overhead, and raindrops the size of beans began pelting down. George quickly opened the umbrella and stepped forward to cover Willow. Thanks, but I can. Willow didn't finish her sentence before a sudden gust of wind flipped the umbrella inside out. George struggled to control it, but in the chaos his foot splashed into a puddle and he stumbled forward, colliding into Willow. They fell onto the damp ground together, George bracing his arm against the wall beside her ear, narrowly avoiding crushing her beneath him. Sorry, he whispered, his breath brushing across Willow's cheek. Too close, so close that Willow could smell the faint woody fragrance of his cologne. So close she could see the raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. In any romantic movie, this was the distance where they would kiss, but in reality, Willow only wanted to punch him. Get off. She gritted her teeth. George immediately pulled back and reached out a hand to help her up. Willow ignored it, pushing against the wall to stand by herself, clothes already soaked through. I'll walk you back, George said, picking up the ruined umbrella, looking a little embarrassed. No need. Willow turned to leave, but then a loud crash echoed from the cafe's back door. Freya, help, quick. Sam's voice was full of panic. Willow rushed back inside, only to be stunned by the scene. The kitchen pipe had burst, water spraying high into the air, the floor already covered by several inches of water. Sam was soaked through, futilely trying to plug the crack with a rag. Where's the main valve? George's voice came from right behind her, by the back wall. Sam shouted. Without another word, George dashed out into the rain. A minute later, the gushing water slowed, then stopped entirely. Willow stood frozen, staring at the soaked, wrecked kitchen, not knowing where to start. Clear the water first. George rolled up his sleeves. Grab a mop, or it'll leak downstairs. For the next half hour, the three of them worked together, managing to get the cafe back in order. Willow couldn't believe George. He not only knew how to fix pipes, but also pointed out exactly where Sam stored his tools, moving with the speed and confidence of a professional handyman. Mr. Chan, I can't thank you enough. Sam shook George's hand enthusiastically. If not for you, my little shop would have been ruined. Just lending a hand, George said modestly. Water dripped from his hair, his white shirt soaked and clinging to his body, faintly revealing the outline of toned abs. Willow turned her head quickly. I'll get a towel. When she returned, Sam had gone to the front to take a phone call. Only George remained in the kitchen, crouched by the pipe with a furrowed brow, inspecting the crack with full concentration. Here, Willow handed him the towel. George took it and wiped his face. Thanks. This pipe's too old, it needs to be replaced. You can even fix plumbing. Willow couldn't help asking. I worked odd repair jobs back in college, George said casually. Later, working in architecture, I spent plenty of time on construction sites. You have to know a little bit of everything. Willow remembered her father's comment about George, a bookish architect. Useless except for drawing blueprints. Clearly, Pablo couldn't have been more wrong. Thanks for today, she said reluctantly. But I still want to know, why are you in clear water? George paused, meeting her gaze directly. I told you, escaping the noise of the city. Coincidence? There are no coincidences in life, George said as he handed the towel back to her. Only inevitable disguises. See you tomorrow, Miss Freya. Willow watched his retreating figure, her mind in turmoil. There were too many mysteries around George, and she wasn't even sure if she wanted the answers. Sam insisted on closing early and even shoved 200 yuan into Willow's hand, telling her to take a cab home. The rain had already stopped, but Willow chose to take the cab anyway. She'd had enough shocks for one day. Back at the inn, Granny Lou greeted her with a mysterious smile. You've got a visitor waiting for you at your door. Willow's heart skipped a beat. George, or that private detective? She cautiously walked up to the third floor. At the corner, she spotted a familiar figure sitting at her room door, playing on her phone. Maria. Maria jumped up and ran to hug her. Surprise. Willow opened the door and pulled her best friend inside. Why are you here? Didn't you say you were being watched? I shook them off. Maria grinned proudly, pulling a pile of snacks and daily necessities out of her backpack. Brought you supplies. Warmth welled up in Willow's chest. Thanks, but I ran into George today. The bag of chips slipped from Maria's hand. What? He showed up at the cafe, pretended not to know me, and said his name was David. Wait. Maria cut her off. Are you sure it was him? Not just someone who looks like him. Unless there are two men in the world who look exactly the same and know how to fix plumbing. Willow flopped onto the bed and recounted the entire encounter to her friend. When she finished, Maria's expression turned grim. Willow, this is absolutely no coincidence. He must have followed you here. That's what I think too. But how did he find me? Private detective, Maria guessed. Or maybe, he installed tracking software on your phone. Willow shot upright. The week before the wedding, he fixed my phone for me. There you go. Maria slapped her thigh. I told you he wasn't as simple as he looked. Willow, you have to be careful. He might be here for revenge. Revenge for me running away. Or, Maria lowered her voice, he has a grudge against your father, and he's using your runaway wedding to stir up chaos. Willow's heart sank as she recalled what the private detective had said. If George really was plotting something, then she was in danger. What should I do? First, don't let him know you recognized him. Maria thought for a moment. Second, figure out his real reason for being in town. If he rented a place, there must be registration records. Willow nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. She had thought escaping the wedding would bring freedom, but instead she had stumbled into an even more complicated whirlpool. Oh, right. Maria pulled a new phone and SIM card from her bag. Use this. Don't touch the old one anymore. Willow accepted the phone gratefully. You're my lifesaver. Of course I am. Maria tilted her head proudly. But Willow, you'd better be ready. If George really has a scheme, then this game has only just begun. Willow looked out the window. Clearwater Town lay quiet and peaceful under the night sky, but she knew a storm was coming. Chapter 4. At 6 in the morning, Willow quietly pushed open the inn's back door. At this hour, all of Clearwater Town was still asleep. Only an early rising street cleaner was sweeping along the empty road. She had left 2 hours earlier than usual on purpose, just to avoid that man who called himself David. Morning, Freya. Willow nearly choked on her own spit. George, no, David, was sitting under the banyan tree by the inn's entrance, holding a steaming cup of coffee. Morning light filtered through the leaves, casting mottled shadows across his face. You, what are you doing here? Willow gripped the strap of her backpack tightly, her knuckles turning white. George stood, brushing non-existent dust off his jeans. Out jogging. The landlady here happens to be my distant aunt. Willow almost burst out laughing. What a ridiculous lie. Granny Lou had lived in Clearwater for 60 years. Since when did she have relatives in Shanghai? Is that so? What a coincidence. She forced a stiff smile. I need to get to work. Let's walk together. It's on the way. George fell into step beside her. I rented a studio right next to the cafe. Willow clenched her molars. This man's skin was thicker than a city wall. She quickened her pace, but with his long legs, George kept up easily. You go to the cafe this early every day? Had breakfast yet? Sleep well last night? Willow suddenly stopped in her tracks. Mr. Chan, are we close friends? George blinked, looking innocently puzzled, like a student wrongly scolded by his teacher. Isn't it normal for neighbors to greet each other? Willow inhaled deeply, reminding herself not to take the bait. He was trying to provoke her, to make her slip. Thanks for your concern. She squeezed out a fake smile. But I prefer to walk alone. Understandable. George nodded, yet still made no move to leave. By the way, I heard there's a weekend market in town. Ever been? Willow quickened her pace, nearly breaking into a jog. George followed at a leisurely stride, even plucking a wildflower from the roadside and handing it to her. "A morning daisy, for you." Willow stared at the pitiful little yellow flower, speechless. What was this supposed to be? Runaway bride and groom's rustic romance? "I don't like flowers." Her tone was cold as she shoved open the cafe's back door. Sam was tallying inventory, seeing the two of them come in together. His brows shot up. Well, you two plan to arrive together." Ran into him outside. Willow cut in quickly, tying on her apron. "Uncle Sam, where's the list for today's bean delivery?" Sam gave her a knowing look, then handed over a slip of paper. "Mr. Chan, the landlord dropped off the keys to your studio. George accepted them." "Thanks. Oh, by the way, I noticed yesterday that the cafe's drainage pipes are getting a bit old. I happen to know a reliable plumber. Want me to introduce him?" "That'd be fantastic." Sam's eyes lit up. "Old who moved away to live with his son. I've been worrying about who could do repairs." At the grinder, Willow pressed down so hard it was as if she meant to dismantle the machine. When had George ever looked at the drainage pipes? What exactly was he scheming? "Freya, go break down those cardboard boxes out back," Sam suddenly said. Saved by the bell, Willow bolted for the backyard. She pushed open the door, and the morning sunlight spilled across the small courtyard. Several big cardboard boxes were stacked in a corner. Grabbing a box cutter, she began breaking them down. "Need a hand?" Willow's hand jerked, the box cutter dragging a crooked line across the cardboard. George, when had he even appeared behind her? He was so close she could smell the faint scent of aftershave on him. "Do you walk without making a sound?" Willow spun around, nearly bumping into his chest, and hurriedly stepped back. George shrugged. Occupational hazard of being an architect. Light footsteps. He crouched down and deftly broke down another box. "These are new cups." "Yeah," Willow admitted reluctantly. "Sam said there'll be more customers over the weekend, so he stocked up on tableware." George picked up a cup, holding it against the light. "The glaze is decent, but some might have bubbles. I'll help sort them out." Willow watched his long fingers turn the cup with the precision of someone handling delicate instruments. In City A, she had only ever seen George in suits and ties, never imagined those hands could be so adept at rough tasks. "You used to do this often." The words slipped out before she could stop herself. It sounded too much like probing into his past. George's lips curved slightly. "Worked part-time in a cafe during college. Later, in architecture. I spent plenty of time on construction sites." He handed her a cup. "This one's got a chip on the rim. It could cut someone's mouth." Their fingers brushed when she took it. Willow recoiled as if shocked by static. George pretended not to notice, calmly moving on to the next. "Why did you come to Clearwater?" she asked suddenly. George's hands paused. "I told you, escaping the noise of the city." "What a coincidence." "So am I," Willow said deliberately. George lifted his gaze, sunlight scattering golden flecks in his eyes. "Yes, a coincidence indeed." They locked eyes for a second, then both turned away. Willow's pulse raced. She cursed herself. What was this? A runaway couple's small-town romance drama? "Freya, customers in front." Sam's shout broke the fragile tension. Willow bolted from the backyard as if fleeing. For the next few days, she avoided every possible chance of being alone with George. But Clearwater Town was too small, whether at the laundromat, the market, or the library. She always seemed to run into him. On Thursday afternoon, during a break, Willow went to the town's public bathhouse. Just as she reached the entrance, a familiar voice rang out inside, off-key, but loud and enthusiastic. "I love to bathe. Turtles fall down." Willow froze. "George?" In the bathhouse. She turned to leave but ran straight into the landlady. "Freya, here you are." The woman's booming voice carried down the street. "Perfect timing. Your boyfriend's in there singing his lungs out. Go calm him down, the neighbors are complaining." "He's not my David. Your girlfriend's here," the landlady shouted into the steamy bathhouse. The door swung open. George leaned out, hair full of suds, a towel wrapped around his waist. Droplets traced down his toned chest and vanished beneath the edge of the fabric. Willow swore she did not stare, at least not for more than 3 seconds. "Freya." George's face lit up in surprise, as though they'd bumped into each other at a romantic restaurant instead of the bathhouse doorway. "You came to bathe too?" Willow's face burned hot enough to fry an egg. "I just remembered I had something else." "Wait," George called. 7 o'clock tonight. Open-air movie in the town square. Come with me." "No." Roman holiday. Audrey Hepburn. About a runaway princess and a reporter. Willow narrowed her eyes. Was he hinting at something? "We'll see," she muttered vaguely before hurrying away. At 6:50 that evening, Willow hid in her room, refusing to admit that she had already changed clothes 3 times and even put on lipstick. Maria's texts filled her inbox, all warnings telling her to stay away from George. He must be plotting something. Don't forget how he sold the wedding house. Willow, don't tell me you still have feelings for him. Willow tossed her phone onto the bed. Of course she didn't have feelings. She was just curious about what George was really up to. Yes, that was all. At exactly 7 o'clock, a knock sounded on the door. "Freya, are you in there?" It was Granny Lou's voice. "There's a stranger at the square asking about a girl who looks like you." Willow yanked open the door. "What kind of person?" "Wearing a black trench coat, sunglasses. Says he's looking for his sister." Granny Lou lowered her voice. "But he doesn't look like a good man. A private detective." Willow's scalp tingled. Her father's people had finally tracked her to Clearwater Town. "Granny, can you lend me a hat and a coat?" 5 minutes later, Willow slipped out the inn's back door wearing a fisherman's hat and an oversized plaid shirt. She needed to warn Sam not to expect her at work tomorrow, then find somewhere to hide for a few days. But as she turned a corner, she slammed into a wall of muscle. "Careful." George steadied her shoulders, his eyes sharp. "What happened?" Willow instinctively tried to pull away, but his grip was like iron. "Let go." "Is someone looking for you?" George asked suddenly. Willow froze. "How do you know?" "Just a guess." George released her and continued calmly. "I saw a stranger asking around for Freya. Said he was her brother's man, sent to bring her back." Willow bit her lip. George knew she was hiding from someone, but he didn't know that detective was actually after Willow, not Freya. This misunderstanding, maybe she could use it. I don't want to see him." She lowered her head, letting her voice tremble. "My brother, he's too controlling." George's expression softened instantly. "I understand. Come with me." He took her hand and led her through a maze of alleys, stopping in front of a 2-story building. A sign hung at the door, "David Chan Architecture Studio. This is where I rent. There's a room upstairs." George unlocked the door. "Hide here for now. I'll check out the square." Willow hesitated. Go home with George? That was dangerous. But the detective was waiting at the square. "Thank you," she finally said, stepping inside with him. The studio was simple, a large drafting table, a few chairs, sketches pinned to the walls, a small kitchenette in the corner, stairs leading up to the second-floor living space. "Sit. Want something to drink?" George asked. "Water's fine." He poured 2 glasses and handed her one. "That detective, he really was sent by your brother." Willow tightened her grip on the cup. "Spinning lies." "Yes, my brother doesn't approve of my boyfriend, so he wants to drag me back." "Boyfriend?" George raised an eyebrow. "A college classmate." Willow forced herself to continue. "My brother thinks he's beneath our family." George's expression turned odd. "Sounds like your brother is pretty authoritarian." "Yeah, very." Willow nodded, thinking bitterly that if her father heard this, his blood pressure would shoot through the roof. George stood. "I'll check the square. Lock the door behind me." After he left, Willow exhaled in relief and began looking around. On the drafting table lay several sketches of Clearwater's scenery, clean, precise lines. She hadn't expected George to be this good at drawing. The stairs creaked under her feet as she went up to the second floor. The bedroom was neater than she imagined. A single bed, a desk, a wardrobe, architectural textbooks and a laptop sat neatly on the desk. On the nightstand was a photo frame. Willow picked it up and nearly dropped it. It was their engagement photo. She was in a pink dress, smiling stiffly, while George's face was utterly calm. Why would he still keep this? Willow's heart pounded like a drum. What was stranger? The photo had clearly been handled often. The edges were worn. The sound of the door opening drifted up from downstairs. Willow hurriedly put the frame back and tiptoed down the stairs. "How was it?" she asked as George walked in. "They left," George said, taking off his coat. "But he said he'll keep searching. Tomorrow he's going to check the town's inns." Willow twisted her fingers nervously. "Then I'll have to move somewhere else." "You can stay here," George said. "There's a guest room upstairs." Willow's eyes widened. "Live with you?" "I'll sleep in the studio." George gestured to the folding cot by the drafting table. "It's safe here." "And," he paused, "I think we have a lot we need to talk about." Willow's throat tightened. Had he figured something out? "Like what?" "Like," George stepped closer. "Why you've been pretending not to know me." The air froze. Willow could hear the frantic pounding of her heart. I don't know what you're talking about." "Willow." George softly spoke her real name. "We both know exactly who the other is." Her legs gave way and she collapsed onto a chair. All the disguises crumbled in that instant. "When did you recognize me?" "From the very first glance." George leaned against the table. "You're terrible at makeup, Freya." Willow wanted to argue, but instead she laughed. It was absurd, like they were 2 bad actors putting on a play no one was watching. "Then why did you pretend to?" George shrugged. "You seem to be enjoying the game." "I didn't have the heart to spoil it." "Bastard," Willow cursed, but there was little heat in it. George chuckled. "Right back at you, runaway bride." Their eyes met, and both broke into laughter. The tension that had stretched for days finally eased, and Willow realized she'd been holding her breath all this time. "So," she drew in a long breath, "you really came to Clearwater just to get some peace?" "Partly." George poured her a glass of water. "But mainly, I came to find you." Willow nearly choked. "Find me? Why?" "For many reasons." George's gaze grew complicated. "But most of all, I wanted to know, why did you run away from the wedding?" Willow lowered her head. staring into her glass. I thought it was obvious. I didn't want an arranged marriage. George's voice was quiet. But you didn't even give me a chance. You judged me without trying to know me. Sentenced me right away. Willow had no reply. He was right. From the start, she had labeled George as her father's puppet, never considering that he might be flesh and blood with his own will. And you? She asked back. Why did you sell the wedding house? Because it was your father's money. George answered bluntly. I didn't want to owe him anything. Willow looked up in shock. My mom told me it was her private savings. On the surface, yes. George gave a cold laugh. But in reality, it was your dad funneling money through her to me, to keep me under his thumb. Images flashed in Willow's mind. Her father's constant criticism of George. Her mother's hesitant silences. George's quietness at family gatherings. She realized now this marriage had been far more complicated than she ever imagined. So, you didn't leave because you were heartbroken? George smiled faintly. Heartbroken? Of course I was. But not for losing the marriage, for being treated as if I were in league with your father. A sharp ache pierced Willow's chest. She had always thought herself the only victim, never once considering George's pain. I'm sorry, she whispered. George shook his head. Don't be. We both made mistakes. He glanced toward the window. Night had fallen. Stay here tonight. We'll figure things out tomorrow. Willow nodded. Then suddenly thought of something. That detective, he really was here for me. Yes. George's expression grew serious. Your father sent him. But don't worry, I already sent him off. How did you manage that? George smiled mysteriously. Told him Freya has a twin sister, working in the neighboring town. Willow couldn't help laughing again. It was ridiculous, but somehow, with George around, even being on the run didn't feel so terrifying anymore. Hungry? George asked. I can make noodles. You can cook. Basic survival skill. George walked toward the small kitchen. Architects work overtime all the time. Can't live off takeout every day. Watching his back, Willow suddenly realized she had never truly known this man. In City A, he was Pablo's future son-in-law. Here in Clearwater, he was just an ordinary man named David, who could fix pipes, sort cups, and cook noodles. And somehow, she liked that version of him more. Chapter 5. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains and fell across the bed. Willow opened her eyes, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling for 3 seconds before remembering where she was, the guest room on the second floor of George's studio. The mattress was as hard as stone, and the pillow smelled faintly of laundry detergent. She reached for her phone. Maria had already bombarded her with 23 messages. Are you insane? Living with him? I checked. George signed a 3-year lease on that building. Willow, are you still alive? Willow sighed and typed back. Still alive. Not killed. Not slept with. Don't worry. She had just hit send when the clattering of pots and pans came from downstairs, followed by a muffled curse. Willow couldn't help but laugh. Slipping quietly down the stairs, George was standing in the tiny kitchen, back to her, wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, his hair tousled. He was flusteredly trying to flip something in the frying pan. What was that? Charcoal. Are you murdering breakfast? Willow leaned against the doorway. George spun around, nearly dropping the pan. You're up. He lifted the spatula awkwardly. I was trying to make an omelet. That's an omelet. Willow peered at the blackened lump. I thought you were brewing an elixir of immortality. The tips of George's ears turned red. I'm better at making noodles. Willow burst out laughing, took the spatula, and nudged him aside. Step back, chef. She turned off the stove and tossed the disaster into the trash. Got any flour? Flour? George blinked in confusion. Maybe. 10 minutes later, Willow had dug up flour, eggs, and half a pack of sausages from the pantry. George hovered at her side like a guilty schoolboy, occasionally handing her a bowl or some seasoning. You can cook? He asked. Basic survival skill. Willow mimicked his tone from last night. Even rich girls take cooking classes. She cracked eggs and mixed the batter with practiced ease. Though my dad's original idea was for me to learn desserts to impress my future in-laws. George chuckled. Looks like Mr. Lou's plan fell through again. Willow poured the batter into the pan. The aroma spread instantly. Do you always do that? She asked. Do what? Play the obedient one on the surface while rebelling underneath. She flipped the golden pancake. Act the good boy in front of my dad. But in reality what? George leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. A bad boy. Willow's hand slipped, the pancake almost flipped wrong. The faint scent of aftershave on him mixed with the fresh morning air, reminding her of that accidental embrace in the rainy alley. The pancake's ready, she said briskly, forcing calm as she plated it, ignoring the heat in her ears. Here, try it. George took a bite, and his eyes lit up immediately. Delicious. Willow tilted her chin proudly. Of course. A rapid knock on the door cut her off. George frowned, set down the plate, and went to open it. Sam stood outside, face flushed as though he'd just run a marathon. David, Freya, good thing you're both here, he panted. Something big has happened. Willow and George exchanged a glance. What happened? Food festival. This noon. Sam waved a flyer in the air. Old Law got rushed to the hospital with acute appendicitis, and his partner's down with food poisoning. Our town has no one left to compete. Willow looked completely lost. What competition? The Clearwater Town Annual Food Festival. Of course. Sam stomped his feet in frustration. We've been champions 3 years in a row. If we skip this year, those jerks from Big Mountain Town will laugh at us for the whole year. George looked even more confused than Willow. So, Sam suddenly grabbed both of their hands. So you two have to represent Clearwater Town. You're outsiders. You've seen more of the world. You're definitely going to win. Willow opened her mouth to refuse, but Sam's eyes filled with tears. The prize is $5,000. If you win, it's all yours. George raised an eyebrow at Willow. Need money. Runaway bride. Shut up. Willow glared at him, then turned to Sam. What are the rules? An hour later, Willow and George stood on the temporary stage in the Clearwater Town Square, facing hundreds of eager eyes, each holding a slip of paper with the contest rules. Time limit, 1 hour. Make 3 dishes using the provided ingredients. Willow read aloud. The judges will score based on creativity, taste, and couple chemistry. What the hell? George leaned in to see her slip. The host, Laura, the town's elementary school teacher, took the mic and explained. This year we've added a special couple category, to make things more fun. We're not. Willow started to protest, but George quickly covered her mouth. Don't blow our cover. He whispered in her ear. There are strangers in the crowd, maybe a detective. Following his gaze, Willow spotted a man in a black trench coat at the edge of the crowd, snapping photos with his phone. She immediately shut her mouth and forced a smile at the host. All right, let the contest begin, Laura announced. At her signal, the other 5 couples rushed straight to the ingredient zone. George pulled Willow back. Plan. You chop, I cook, Willow said quickly. 3 dishes, appetizer, main course, dessert. Got it. The ingredient zone was limited. Some common vegetables, meats, eggs, flour, spices. Willow swiftly picked a few essentials, and George, like a pro supplier, precisely grabbed the things she'd overlooked. Back at their station, George started prepping the food without a word. Willow stole a glance at his knife skills, clean and sharp, carrot shreds evenly cut as if by machine. They teach knife skills in cooking class, she whispered. Architecture model making, George replied without looking up. Precision down to the millimeter. The first appetizer was Willow's idea, ham and vegetable rolls with a special sauce. She mixed the dressing while George sliced the veggies into thin strips perfect for rolling. Their teamwork was seamless, hardly needing words. Half the time's gone, the host shouted. For the main course, Willow decided on pan-seared chicken steak. But when she turned to grab the chicken, the plate was completely empty. Where's the chicken? She asked in panic. George looked innocent. You told me to prep it, so I chopped it all of it. That was for 3 dishes. You didn't specify. George shrugged. Now what? Willow took a deep breath and glanced at the few ingredients left. Change of plan. Chicken. Chop it up and turn it into meatballs. Meatballs with what? That. Willow pointed to a basket of wild greens in the corner that the other contestants had ignored. Purslane. Stir-fried. George raised an eyebrow. You recognize wild greens? My grandma lived in the countryside when I was a kid, Willow explained briefly as she started mincing the chicken. Quick, chop me some ginger. The last 10 minutes, the dessert became a real problem. There was still flour and eggs, but the sugar had already been used up by the other teams. A savory dessert, George suggested. Willow shook her head. The judges are all elders. They won't be used to that. Suddenly, an idea lit up her eyes. Honey. I saw a jar of honey in the ingredients section. George rushed off and came back with the jar. Willow quickly kneaded the dough, while George used the honey and leftover fruit to make a simple jam. 1 minute left. In a flurry, Willow plated the freshly fried little cakes, and George drizzled the honey jam on top, finishing with a sprinkle of mint leaves. Time's up. Both exhaled in relief, staring at their 3 dishes, less refined than the others, but fragrant and appetizing. The judges, 3 elders of the town, tasted every dish and then huddled together, whispering. Willow was so nervous her nails almost dug into George's arm. The winners are. Laura opened the envelope, representing Clearwater Town, David and Freya. Willow's eyes widened. We won. The crowd erupted in applause. George looked surprised too, but quickly scooped Willow up and spun her around. Willow yelped and instinctively clung to his neck. Put me down, she hissed in his ear. Play along. The detectives watching. George whispered back, grinning like a mischievous child. After collecting the certificate and the envelope with $5,000 cash, they were immediately surrounded by enthusiastic townsfolk. Sam excitedly announced there would be a celebration party at the cafe that night, and everyone must attend. We need to find a way to slip out, Willow murmured to George. That detective's been tailing us. George nodded. We'll improvise tonight. But their plan completely collapsed under Sam's special champion cocktail. By 8 o'clock, the cafe was packed. George had downed at least 5 glasses of bizarrely colored drinks, his eyes already glassy. His tolerance is that bad? Willow asked Sam. Who knows? Never saw him drink before. Sam poured another glass. Come on, David, bottoms up. George waved weakly, nearly sliding off his chair. Willow hurriedly caught him. Enough. He can't drink anymore. Oh, protective now, Sam teased, winking. All right, no more. You two lovebirds go home and rest early. By the time Willow half-carried, half-dragged George out of the cafe, night had fallen deep. George hung on her like a sack of cement. You look skinny, but why so heavy? Willow panted as she hauled him toward the workshop. George suddenly lifted his head, eyes unfocused. Willow, what? You're really beautiful. He grinned foolishly, then collapsed onto her shoulder. Willow rolled her eyes and trudged on. Under the moonlight, their shadows stretched long, like a pair of conjoined twins. Back at the workshop, Willow used every ounce of strength to get George onto the upstairs bed. Just as she turned to leave, George grabbed her wrist. Don't go. Let go. Drunkard. I'm not a drunkard. George frowned, struggling to focus. I'm an architect. Willow couldn't help but laugh. Yes, a great architect. Suddenly George sat upright, unusually serious. Willow, I need to tell you a secret. What secret? George lowered his voice mysteriously. The money I made from selling my house, I put it all in a Swiss bank. Willow raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Seriously? George nodded, almost toppling off the bed with the motion. Your dad thinks I ran off with his dirty money, but really, I just didn't want to use it. Willow's heartbeat suddenly quickened. Why are you telling me this? Because. George tilted his head at her, and for a brief moment his gaze turned startlingly clear. I like you. Then, like a robot whose power had been cut, he fell flat back onto the bed. Moments later, snores filled the room. Willow froze where she stood, at a loss. What had he just said? That he liked her? Was it drunken nonsense or? Shaking her head, she decided not to argue with a drunk. After pulling a blanket over George, she noticed his phone had slipped out of his pocket. She bent to pick it up and meant to set it on the nightstand, but her finger accidentally pressed the power button. The screen lit up, and the lock screen wallpaper made Willow gasp. It was a photo of her working at the cafe, clearly taken in secret, yet unexpectedly flattering. What the hell? She tried to swipe, but it asked for a password. Hesitating, Willow entered George's birthday. Wrong, she thought for a moment, then entered her own birthday. The screen unlocked. Pervert, she muttered under her breath, but curiosity got the better of her. Most of the photo album was filled with architecture shots and design sketches, but one folder was encrypted, titled Project Tracking. Willow bit her lip, then entered her own birthday again. The folder opened. Inside were photos of her, dozens, from the day she ran away from her wedding, at the train station, at the inn, at the cafe, at the library, even outside the public bathhouse while she was talking to Maria. George. Willow almost smashed the phone into his face, but then her eyes caught the dates. The earliest photo was from 3 months before their engagement. This can't be. She flipped through them, her heartbeat accelerating. The photos were taken at malls and restaurants in City A, at her gym, her nail salon. Every moment she'd never realized was being watched. The creepiest part was that these weren't taken by the same person. Angles, quality, and style all varied. Willow set the phone down and stared at the sleeping George for a long time. She thought she had orchestrated the perfect runaway, but in truth she'd been under surveillance all along. Who was this man really? Why was he doing this? Moving quietly, she left the bedroom and curled up on the studio sofa downstairs, where she spent the night. Her dreams were full of George's eyes, clear, drunk, tender, calculating, countless eyes staring at her, leaving her nowhere to hide. The next morning, Willow was woken by footsteps upstairs. She rubbed her eyes and saw George coming down the stairs, holding his forehead, his face pale as a ghost. Morning, he croaked. Why am I upstairs? You blacked out? Willow asked carefully. George nodded painfully. Last thing I remember was Sam's third drink. He looked at Willow. I didn't say anything weird, did I? Willow met his eyes. You said you put the money from selling your house in a Swiss bank. George's hand trembled noticeably, but his expression didn't change. And you believed a drunk's nonsense. You also said you liked me. This time George froze completely, his ears turning red so fast it was almost visible. Willow went for the final blow. And I looked through your phone. Stalker creep. George's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and finally sank down on the stairs in defeat. I can explain. I'm listening. Willow crossed her arms. George took a deep breath. Those photos, not all of them were taken by me. Oh, so you had an accomplice? The detective. George rubbed his temples. The one your father hired. Willow frowned. What? From the day of our blind date, Your father had someone tail us. George gave a bitter smile. I just hacked into the detective's cloud and copied the photos. Why? George looked up at her, his gaze complicated. Because I wanted to know the real you, not the perfect socialite at banquets, but Willow in her everyday life. Willow's heart skipped a beat. Then why keep those photos? George didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked softly, do you really not remember when we first met? Willow froze. She had always thought their first meeting was at the blind date dinner Pablo had arranged 3 years ago, at the architecture department graduation exhibit at University A. George's voice was quiet. You came as a sponsor's representative, wearing a red dress. You almost slipped by the fountain. I caught you. Willow tried to recall, but only a vague impression surfaced. And then, George smiled faintly. I remembered you. Later, when your father came to me saying he wanted to introduce his daughter, I saw the photo. It was you. So I agreed. Willow didn't know whether to be shocked or moved. So you really like me? George stood, walked up to her. Drunken words don't count. He brushed her cheek lightly. When I truly want to confess, I'll make sure you know. Willow slapped his hand away. Don't change the subject. Those photos, I'll delete them. And the detective, already handled. George walked toward the kitchen as he spoke. Yesterday I slipped him $5,000. He promised to go back and tell your father there's no sign of Willow here. Willow's eyes widened. You bribed the detective with our prize money? Our prize money? George raised an eyebrow. I thought of it as my ransom fee. And yesterday, someone sure looked like she enjoyed being carried in a princess hug. Willow snatched a throw pillow from the sofa and hurled it at him. Go to hell, George. George caught it with a laugh, his gaze unexpectedly tender. And in that moment, Willow realized that the cat and mouse game between them had completely changed its nature. And to her surprise, she was starting to look forward to what came next. Chapter 6. Freya, you've got mail. Willow looked up from her coffee cup and saw the postman, Martin, standing at the cafe entrance, waving a brown envelope in his hand. She wiped her hands, took the envelope, and immediately noticed the Lou Corporation's golden wax seal, the official mark her father always used for formal letters. Thanks. She forced a smile, though her heart pounded like a drum. Martin didn't leave right away. Instead, he eyed her curiously. You know someone from Lou Corporation? That's one of the biggest companies in City A. Distant relatives. Willow slipped the envelope into her apron pocket. Please don't tell anyone. Martin mimed zipping his lips, grinned, and left. Willow glanced around. The cafe was quiet. George was gone. He'd said in the morning he was going to the neighboring town for building supplies. Only Sam and 2 regulars were there, no one paying attention to her. She slipped into the kitchen, locked the door, and with trembling hands tore open the envelope. Inside was a sheet of fine stationery, her father's sharp handwriting instantly recognizable. Willow, this is your final chance. Come home within a week to meet the Ito family's son, or you'll be permanently cut off from the family. Don't think I can't find you. The detective has confirmed you're in Clearwater Town. Father. On the back was an attached profile of Ito's heir, Makoto Ito, 28, only son of Ito Real Estate, Cambridge graduate. In the photo he wore a perfectly tailored suit, his smile measured to textbook precision. Willow's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the paper. How had her father found her? Hadn't the detective been bribed? Could it be George had lied to her? She pulled out her phone, about to call George, when the back door suddenly swung open. Willow hastily hid the letter behind her, only to see Maria storming in. Willow, big trouble. Maria grabbed her shoulders. Your dad sent people to my house. What? 2 men in black suits. Said they were from Lou Corporation's legal department. Maria's face was pale. They asked my parents if they knew where you were, and said they'd sue me for aiding a kidnapping. A sharp pain twisted in Willow's stomach. Her father was determined to crush her. What did your parents say? Of course they said they didn't know. Maria rolled her eyes. But my mom nearly had a heart attack. She told me to find you right away and tell you to. Tell me what? To get the hell away, so you don't drag us down with you, Maria muttered. Willow felt as if a hammer had slammed into her chest. She'd always known Maria's mother didn't like her much, but she hadn't expected to be discarded so bluntly. Quietly, she said, I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I'll leave Clearwater Town immediately. Where to? I don't know. As far as possible. Willow tore off her apron. Tell Sam for me. Just say I had a family emergency. Maria grabbed her wrist. Wait, you're not even going to tell George? Willow bit her lip. He might have already told my dad. No way. Maria cut her off firmly. I checked. George has nothing to do with your father. On the contrary, he's got bad blood with him. Willow frowned. What kind of bad blood? I'm not sure. But my best friend's cousin works at Lou Corporation. He said George once openly opposed one of your father's real estate projects. They had a huge argument during a meeting. That was news. Willow had always thought George was just her father's yes man. Anyway, I think you can trust him. Maria pulled out her wallet and shoved a wad of cash into Willow's hand. Take it, just in case. Willow's eyes stung. Maria, don't get sentimental. Maria patted her cheek. Pack your things. I'll keep watch. Willow nodded, about to turn around, when the back door swung open again. This time it was George, carrying a paper bag from the hardware store, sweat beading on his forehead. What are you two plotting? He raised an eyebrow at their tense expressions. Maria and Willow exchanged a glance. Tell him, Maria said at last. I'll stand guard outside. After Maria left, George locked the door and turned to Willow. What happened? Silently, Willow handed him her father's letter. George scanned it quickly, his expression growing darker. The detective betrayed us? Willow asked. George shook his head. Impossible. I checked his background. He wouldn't dare. Then how did my dad find me? It might not be that he found you. George pulled out his phone and opened an email. Look at this. Willow took the phone. On the screen was a financial news article. Lou Corporation's capital chain broken. Multiple projects face suspension. The date was 3 days ago. I don't understand. Your father's desperation isn't about finding his daughter, it's about finding money. George's voice was calm, analytical. Ito Real Estate can save him. That's why he's rushing to force you into the marriage. A terrifying thought flashed through Willow's mind. He didn't agree to cancel our engagement just so he could sell me off to Ito, did he? George's expression confirmed her suspicion. Bastard. Willow slammed her fist on the counter. To him, I'm just a bargaining chip. George gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Calm down. Anger won't solve anything. Then what will? Willow shook his hand off, running away. I'll pack my bags right now. George sighed. Run again. Where this time? Tibet? Or straight overseas? I don't know, as long as it's far from him. George suddenly smiled. You really haven't changed at all. What's that supposed to mean? Your first instinct is always to run. George shook his head. Last time it was running from marriage, now it's running abroad. Next time what? Running to Mars? Willow was left speechless. He wasn't wrong, she had always been running, but what else could she do? I have a suggestion, George said suddenly. What suggestion? Fake marriage. Willow's eyes widened. What? Legally husband and wife, but in reality, we live our own lives. George's tone was calm, as if discussing the weather. That way, your father can't force you into a blind date, and I can keep the money from selling my house without it being taken back. Alarms went off in Willow's head. You're doing this for money? Partly, George admitted without hesitation, but mainly to get you out of this mess. No, thanks. Willow gave a cold laugh. I'd rather go dig mines in Africa than fake a marriage. George seemed unsurprised by her rejection. Then do you have a better plan? Willow opened her mouth, then shut it. She didn't. Think about it. George pocketed his phone. You don't have to answer right now. Just then, Sam's voice rang out from outside. Freya, someone's here for you. Both Willow and George tensed. Who? Willow asked through the door. Says it's your aunt. Willow and George exchanged a baffled look. Aunt? She had no aunt. George gestured for her to stay hidden and pushed the door open himself. Willow pressed her ear to the door, then heard a familiar female voice. Where's Willow? I'm her mother. Willow's knees nearly gave out. Her mother? Here in Clearwater Town. Forget hiding. She shoved the door open and rushed out. In the cafe's corner, a woman in sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat was anxiously scanning the room. Despite the disguise, Willow instantly recognized her mother's elegant profile. Mom. The woman turned, immediately embracing her. Thank God. Sam tactfully slipped into the kitchen, and Maria stood guard by the door. George poured a cup of tea, set it on the table, and quietly stepped aside. How did you find me? Willow asked in a whisper. Your father had people trace Maria's deliveries. Her mother removed the sunglasses, her eyes swollen from crying. Willow, you have to come home with me. No way. Willow broke free from her mother's arms. I'm not marrying some Ito heir. It's not marriage. Her mother lowered her voice. It's to save your father. The company is about to collapse. Creditors are blocking the house. Willow looked at George in shock. He looked just as stunned. It's worse than the reports say. Her mother dabbed at her eyes. Your father already mortgaged the house and all our assets. If he doesn't get funds from the Ito family, so he sells his daughter. Willow's voice trembled. It's not selling. It's. Her mother suddenly noticed George, her tone sharp and wary. Who is he? David. Willow blurted before George could speak. My boyfriend. George raised an eyebrow but didn't deny it. Her mother's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion, finally settling into something complicated, almost knowing. I see. She turned to George. Young man, could you give us a moment of privacy? George nodded, taking Maria with him as he left the cafe. The moment the door shut, her mother seized Willow's hand. Are you serious with this, David? Willow forced herself to lie. Of course, we're planning to get married. Nonsense. Her mother slammed the table. Do you even know him? His family? His work? He's an architect, runs his own studio. Willow improvised quickly. We're very much in love. Her mother studied her for several seconds, then suddenly smiled. Willow, when you lie, your right eye twitches. It's been that way since you were little. Willow was speechless. Listen, her mother sighed. I'm not here to drag you back. I came to warn you. Warn me. Your father has already filed for a court order. If you don't show up within a week, he'll declare you mentally unstable and obtain guardianship over you. Her mother pulled a document from her bag. By then, he'll legally lock you away until you agree to the marriage. Willow's vision went black. Her father would really go that far. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm your mother. Her mother gently caressed her cheek. I know you're not happy. That George, he's not exactly a good man either, but at least he's better than Makoto. Willow's eyes widened. You know David is George? Of course. Her mother smiled faintly. Who do you think registered the Orange Grove villa under his name? Fragments flashed through Willow's mind, her mother quietly defending George, her father's odd expression whenever the wedding house was mentioned, George saying the money was dirty. You two teamed up to deceive my father. Not deceive, protect. Her mother stood up. Your father has grown more paranoid every year. I had to prepare a fallback for myself. She glanced at her watch. I have to go. My driver is waiting. Mom. Willow didn't know what to say. 1 week. Willow. Her mother put her sunglasses back on. Either you return to marry Makoto, or, she cast a meaningful glance at the door, find a better solution. After her mother left, Willow sat frozen in her chair, her mind a complete mess. The door opened softly and George walked in. How did it go? He asked. Willow repeated her mother's warning mechanically. George listened, his expression calm. So, he concluded, you have 1 week to decide, go back for the arranged marriage, or have a fake one with me. This isn't a multiple choice question. Willow snapped. Both options are terrible. George unexpectedly smiled. There's another option. What? A real marriage. Willow almost fell off her chair. Are you insane? More reliable than a fake one. George shrugged. At least we wouldn't have to pretend to be in love. We're not in love. George didn't argue. He just looked at her steadily. And suddenly Willow realized she wasn't sure that statement was entirely true. At least, not for her. I need time to think, she said at last. George nodded. What do you want for dinner? I'll go buy ingredients. Willow stared at him in disbelief. In the face of such a huge crisis, he was thinking about dinner. Anything. There's no dish called anything. George insisted. Willow suddenly exploded. Can you be serious for once? We're talking about my future. And people still need to eat. George said calmly. The greater the crisis, the more you have to stick to a normal routine. That's what I learned during the army. Willow's eyes widened. You were in the army? 2 years after college. George spoke casually. So, dinner. Sweet and sour ribs. Willow answered without thinking, then quickly shook her head. No, we're talking about sweet and sour ribs, stir-fried vegetables, seaweed and egg soup. George was already heading toward the door. I'll get the groceries. You rest a while. Willow watched his back, torn between punching him and hugging him. How could this man still think about recipes at a time like this? After George left, Maria slipped in. Well, she asked anxiously. Willow quickly explained the situation. Maria's eyes went wide as saucers. So your choices are, marry Ito, or marry George. That's the easiest decision ever. Simple. Maria slapped the table. Of course you should choose George. He's handsome, he can cook, and he's even willing to stand up to Pablo for you. Willow rubbed her forehead. Maria, this isn't some beauty contest. Then do you like him? Willow was at a loss for words. Like George, she hated his arrogance, his calm logic, the way he always seemed to be in control. But those very qualities gave her a strange sense of reassurance in times of crisis. I don't know, she admitted at last. Then take the gamble. Maria's voice was firm. It's still better than marrying that Ito guy. At that moment, lightning flashed outside, followed by a sudden downpour. Maria glanced toward the window. Damn, I have to go or I'll miss the last bus. She hugged Willow quickly. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But remember, she pointed outside at George, running back through the storm. Drenched to the bone, that man just turned himself into a soaked mess for your sweet and sour ribs. After Maria left, George stepped in, dripping wet. Storm warning. Power might go out in the whole town. As if to prove his point, the cafe lights flickered, then died. Darkness fell, broken only by flashes of lightning across their faces. Where's Sam? Willow asked, checking the circuit box. George set the grocery bag down in the dark. We need to head back to the workshop. It's not safe here. No sooner had he spoken than a loud crash echoed, followed by Sam's shout, the roof's leaking. Freya, grab plastic sheets and buckets from the storeroom. Willow switched on her phone flashlight. George shrugged off his wet jacket and took the phone from her. I'll get the supplies. You help Sam. I'm going with you. Willow insisted. There's too much stuff in the storeroom, you don't know the layout. They dashed into the rain, reaching the small back storeroom. As soon as they pushed the door open, a strong gust slammed it shut behind them. The storeroom was cluttered, but Willow managed to find the plastic sheets and buckets. Then a menacing creak came from above. "Watch out." George yanked her aside just as a large section of the ceiling collapsed, landing exactly where she had been standing seconds before. Willow's heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst. George's arms wrapped tightly around her, their bodies pressed close in the darkness. "Thanks," she whispered. George didn't let go. "Willow, about the marriage. This isn't the time." She tried to pull away. "It's exactly the time." George's voice was steady against the thunder. "Listen, I don't care if it's real or fake, but one thing's certain, I will never let you go back to that devouring family." Willow looked up at him. A bolt of lightning lit George's face, his gaze burning hot enough to scorch her. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because." George drew in a deep breath. "Because I fucking fell in love with you. From the moment I first saw you at the graduation exhibition 3 years ago." For a moment, Willow's world stood still. The rain, the thunder, Sam shouting in the distance, all faded away, leaving only George's breath and her own deafening heartbeat. You never said." George gave a bitter smile. "I said it 100 times, in my own way. Fixing your phone, accompanying you to boring banquets, even letting you run away from the wedding." Memories of the photos flashed in Willow's mind, the countless shots George had of her. Every step recorded, not surveillance. Obsession. "So the wedding house, it was my way of declaring war on your father," George admitted. "I knew it was his money, so I sold it out of spite, to show him I'm no puppet he can control." Suddenly, so many things clicked into place for Willow: why George kept his distance from her father, why her mother secretly helped him, why he sold the house the moment she ran away. "You used me," she said quietly. "At first, yes," George admitted without hesitation. "But later," a flash of lightning lit up the sincerity in his eyes. "Later I realized, you and I are the same kind of people, both resisting, just in different ways. You choose to run, I choose to lie low." Willow didn't know how to respond. His words were like a mirror, reflecting the truth she had always refused to admit. She had indeed been running, away from her family, from responsibility, from her own feelings. "We should head back," she finally said, her voice softer than she expected. George released her, though his gaze never wavered. "Think about my proposal. Real marriage, not fake." Willow neither agreed nor refused. She grabbed the plastic sheets and buckets, pushed open the storeroom door, and dashed into the rain. George followed close behind, the two of them running like lunatics fleeing the world. Back at the cafe, Sam was frantically catching the leaks with pans. Together the three of them laid out the sheets and positioned the buckets. But the rain was too fierce, the first floor was already flooding. "We can't stay here tonight." Sam frowned. "Freya, you should crash at David's place." Willow wanted to refuse, but George had already picked up her bag. "Let's go." The water's rising fast. Outside, the street had turned into a river. They waded back to the workshop, soaked to the bone. George handed Willow a towel and dry clothes. "Shower first. I'll make some ginger tea." Willow stood under the hot spray, letting the water wash away the chill and her tangled thoughts. George's confession had shattered all her defenses like a bomb. He loved her, since 3 years ago. Absurd. And yet it explained so much. She slipped into the clothes he'd given her, an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants, and stepped out. The studio was lit by candlelight. George was bent over the small stove, the warm glow outlining his sharp profile. He handed her a steaming cup. "The ginger tea's ready. Helps prevent colds." Willow took it. Their fingers brushed briefly on the rim before pulling apart. She sipped the spicy liquid, warmth spreading from her throat to her stomach. "George," she said, setting the cup down and meeting his eyes, "if we really did marry, really, would you respect my choices?" George's expression turned serious. "What choices?" "For example, if I didn't want children right away, or if I wanted to keep working." "Of course." George's answer came without hesitation. "You'd be my wife, not an accessory." Willow's heart sped up. "And finances?" "Separate accounts. Anything shared, 50-50. George answered smoothly, as though he'd thought it through long ago. "You can keep using the name Freya until you're ready to reclaim your real one." She was startled by how thorough he was. "You've thought of all this since the day you ran away from the wedding." George gave a wry smile. "The plans just kept changing." The rain outside had eased, but the candlelight still flickered against the walls, like the unrest in their hearts. Willow looked at George's face softened by the glow, and suddenly realized, maybe this was what she had always been searching for. Someone who knew all of her, and still chose to stay. "I need another night to think," she said at last. George nodded, pointing upstairs. "You take the bed. I'll sleep on the couch." Before going up, Willow glanced back at him. "George, if, would you regret it?" George blew out the candle. In the darkness, his voice was clear. "The only regret I have in my life is not stopping you from running away that day." Willow's eyes stung in the dark as she turned to climb the stairs. That night, the storm washed over Clearwater Town, just as it washed against the walls she had built around her heart for so many years. The morning sunlight slipped through the gap in the curtains and spilled across the bed. Willow opened her eyes. Disoriented, she was lying on the guest bed in George's studio, wearing his t-shirt. In her memory lingered the storm, the ginger tea, and that proposal. She sat up abruptly, her hair a tangled mess. George had proposed to her. A real marriage? Or had she just dreamed it? From downstairs came the clatter of pans and the aroma of coffee. Willow ruffled her hair and patted down the stairs quietly. George was at the small kitchen stove, his back to her, frying eggs. He wore gray lounge pants and a white tank top, the muscles of his shoulders shifting with each movement, sunlight gilding him like a halo. Morning. Willow leaned against the doorframe, her voice hoarse. George turned, the faintest of smiles tugging at his lips. Sleep well? Not bad. Willow took the coffee he handed her, carefully avoiding his gaze. About last night, have you decided? George slid the eggs onto a plate, moving with the same calm as if they were discussing the weather. Willow stared into the swirling surface of her coffee. I need more information. Like what? She lifted her head. Like, if we marry, where would we live? You can't stay in Clearwater Town forever. George set the plate on the small table. I have a job offer in Singapore. We could leave any time. Willow's eyes widened. Singapore? When did you apply? George sat down and cut into his egg. Half a year ago. I originally planned to take you with me after the wedding. A pang tightened Willow's chest. So George had long had a plan, a fresh start that didn't depend on Pablo. And she had wrecked it all with her runaway wedding. And now? She asked quietly. Plans the same. George bit into his toast. Only difference is, it's no longer a honeymoon trip, but an escape. Willow couldn't help but laugh. Sounds like a crime movie. Life already is a bad crime movie, George said, sipping his coffee. We're both the victims and the criminals. Willow was about to reply when a sharp knock pounded the door. George frowned, got up, peeked through the peephole, and his expression darkened instantly. What is it? Willow whispered. George turned to her. Your father's here. The fork slipped from Willow's hand and clattered against the plate. What? He brought 4 bodyguards. They're right at my door. George's voice was unnervingly steady. There'll be men at the back exit too. Willow jumped up, panicked, glancing around. We have to run. No escape. George gripped her wrist. Listen, whatever happens, remember our plan. What PLA? The door crashed open. Pablo's towering figure filled the doorway, 4 men in black suits looming behind him. In just 3 months, her father seemed older, gray at the temples, but the sharpness in his eyes was undimmed. Found you. Pablo's voice was like a blade scraping glass. Instinctively, Willow shrank behind George. The small movement seemed to enrage her father further. He strode inside, one bodyguard shutting the door behind him. Willow, pack your things. You're coming home with me. Pablo's command was iron. I'm not going back. Willow forced herself to meet his gaze. And I won't marry Makoto. Chapter 7. Pablo sneered. It's not up to you. He turned to George. And you, boy, do you know how many years fraud gets you? George raised an eyebrow. Fraud? What fraud? Using marriage as a pretense to obtain property, then reselling it. Pablo pulled a document from his pocket. The court has already filed the case. Willow snatched the paper and skimmed it quickly. This is impossible. You forced the engagement. Got proof? Pablo smirked. I've got the engagement banquet photos, the property transfer contract, and George's sales record, witnesses and evidence, all there. Willow shook with rage. You shameless bastard. George, however, remained unnervingly calm. Mr. Liu, why make things so complicated? Just say what you want. 2 things. Pablo raised 2 fingers. First, Willow comes home and marries. Second, you return the money from the house sale and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Non-disclosure agreement? Willow frowned at George. The corner of George's mouth curved slightly. Afraid I'll mention Liu Corporation's financial fraud. Mr. Liu. Pablo's face instantly darkened. What nonsense are you spouting? Last year, in Q3, you inflated the progress of the Golden Bay project by 30%. Tricking the bank into issuing $270 million in loans. George's tone was as calm as if reporting the weather. Want me to keep going? Willow's eyes widened. How did George know this? Pablo's expression shifted from anger to shock, then settled into a dangerous calm. And you think anyone would believe you on your word alone? I have the original reports and photos from the project supervisor. George shrugged. Enough for the Securities Commission to open an investigation. Pablo suddenly snatched a water glass from the table and hurled it at the wall. Glass shattered, shards flying everywhere. You dare play me? George pulled Willow behind him, shielding her from the shards. Right back at you, Mr. Liu. The tension in the room was suffocating, until chaos broke out outside the door. A shrill female voice cut through. Let me in. I need to see George. Everyone froze. George frowned. Who? The door burst open. A young woman in a tight red dress rushed in, makeup immaculate, her belly slightly rounded. Her eyes locked on George, and tears welled instantly. George, I finally found you. She flung herself toward him. Our baby. You can't abandon our baby. Time seemed to freeze. Willow stared at the woman claiming to be pregnant with George's child, her mind buzzing. George looked like he'd seen a ghost. Sophia, you're pregnant. 4 months already. The woman, Sophia, sobbed. The night you abandoned me. That's when it happened. I've been searching for you ever since. Pablo's mouth curled into a victorious smile. Looks like my daughter was right to run from this marriage. Mr. Wong, your character is truly impressive. Willow stood rooted to the floor, her legs heavy as stone. Was this real? George had an ex-girlfriend, and got her pregnant. Then what did last night's proposal mean? George pushed Sophia away and turned to Willow. Willow, let me explain. Willow's voice trembled. Explain what? She's your ex. She's carrying your child. No, we broke up a long time ago. George grabbed Willow's hand. This baby can't possibly be mine. Sophia sobbed harder. How can you say that? That night you were drunk, at my place. Pablo let out a cold laugh. Willow, now do you see his true colors? Willow tore her hand from George's grasp, her mind in chaos. Who was she supposed to believe? Was George's proposal last night genuine, or had he been playing her all along? Suddenly George smiled. The expression sent a chill down Willow's spine. Too calm, too assured. Sophia. He turned to the weeping woman. You said the baby is 4 months old. Sophia hiccuped through her tears. Yes, 4 months ago, that rainy night. Interesting. George pulled out his phone. Because 4 months ago, I was in Singapore attending an architecture summit. I have immigration records to prove it. He pulled up a photo. Here I am with the director of the Singapore Construction Bureau at Marina Bay, dated the very night you claim I abandoned you. Sophia's face went pale. I must have gotten the date wrong. And something even more interesting. George swiped to another image. 3 months ago, you posted a bikini shot on your social feed, your stomach flat as a board. He handed the phone to Willow. And medically speaking, a woman 4 months pregnant would already be showing. Willow looked at the picture. Just as George said, Sophia's belly had been perfectly flat back then, though now it was clearly rounded. That was an old photo. Sophia stammered, flustered. Really? George sneered. Then let's go to a hospital for an ultrasound. We'll see exactly how far along you are. Sophia abruptly stopped crying, her expression twisting into something vicious. George, you bastard. She turned on Pablo. Mr. Liu, don't let him fool you. He and Willow aren't in love at all. He's only using her to get revenge on you. Pablo's frown deepened. What do you mean? George told me himself. Sophia shrieked. He got close to Willow to get back at you for forcing his father into bankruptcy years ago. His phone has a locked album, full of stalker photos of her. Willow's eyes flew wide, staring at George. That part she knew was true. She had seen those photos herself. But George did something unexpected. He smiled. You're right. I do have a locked album. He met Willow's gaze squarely. But not for revenge. Because I love her. Willow's heart skipped a beat. 3 years ago, at the architecture department's graduation exhibit at a university, I saw Willow for the first time. George's voice was steady, resonant. She was wearing a red dress. By the fountain, she nearly fell. And I caught her. From that moment, I knew she was the one I'd been searching for. Willow's lips trembled. Then why? Why didn't I just pursue you? George gave a bitter smile. Because back then I was just a broke graduate, and your father had already started lining up wealthy suitors for you. Pablo scoffed. Ridiculous. George continued. Later your father came to me with the marriage proposal. I knew perfectly well he only wanted to use my architect credentials, but I agreed, because it was the only way to get close to you. Sophia shrieked. He's lying. Mr. Liu, he's putting on an act. George ignored her. Those photos, I paid people to take them because I wanted to know the real you. Not the socialite daughter at the banquets, but Willow in her everyday life. Willow's eyes burned. She remembered those images, the side of her face while reading in the library, her frustrated frown trying to make latte art at the cafe, the smile she gave when feeding stray cats on the street, each captured so naturally, so full of love. Enough. Pablo cut him off harshly. Willow, you're coming home. This man is a liar and not worth your trust. Willow stood frozen, torn between her father, George, and her own heart. Then George suddenly dropped to one knee, in front of everyone, and took her hand. Willow, I know this isn't the most romantic place, but I'll ask again, will you marry me? Not a fake marriage, a real one. Willow's eyes widened. Are you insane? Now. Right now. George's gaze was unwavering. In front of everyone. I want your father to know, I'm not here for money, or revenge, but because I love you. Absurd. Pablo roared. He turned to his bodyguards. Take her away. 2 men grabbed Willow by the arms. George jumped up, blocking them. Don't touch her. George. Willow cried in panic. Willow, answer me. George locked his eyes on hers. Yes or no? Time froze. Willow stared into his unwavering gaze, and suddenly she understood her own heart. From the moment they met again at the cafe, She had resisted, but had always been drawn in. His deftness fixing pipes, his focus in the kitchen, even his cunning when outsmarting her father. All those pieces formed a man she couldn't help but love. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, I'll marry George. Pablo's face turned livid. You've been brainwashed. He barked at the guards. Take her, now. The bodyguards tore them apart. Willow struggled fiercely. Dad, you can't do this. Enough. We'll talk at home. Pablo dragged her toward the door. In the chaos, George was shoved against the wall by 2 more guards, but still shouted, Mr. Liu, don't forget those files. If you harm Willow, they'll be on the Securities Commission's desk by morning. Pablo froze, then turned back with an icy sneer. You think this is over, boy? You'll pay the price. I'll be waiting. George's voice rang out, defiant. But remember, Willow is my fiancée. No one can change that. Willow was forced into a waiting limousine outside. Through the glass she saw George being pushed into another car. Their eyes met one last time, and he mouthed 2 words to her, wait for me. The engine roared, and Clearwater Town blurred into the distance. Silent tears streamed down Willow's cheeks, but unlike before, this time her heart carried a small, fierce flame. George would come for her. She knew it, and this time, she would not run. Chapter 8. The iron gates of the Liu family villa clanged shut behind her with a heavy metallic thud. Willow was escorted by 2 bodyguards up to the 3rd-floor bedroom, and the door was locked immediately after she was pushed inside. She rushed to the window, watching the black sedan carrying George drive out of the estate, disappearing down the tree-lined road. Miss, Master asked that you wash up and rest, came the voice of Uncle Sam, the family butler, from outside the door. Dinner will be brought to your room. Willow didn't reply. She looked around at the bedroom where she had grown up. Light pink wallpaper, white European-style furniture, cosmetics and perfumes neatly arranged on the vanity. Everything was the same, yet it all felt foreign. After 3 months away, the room now felt like a meticulously decorated cage. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the bed, burying her face into the pillow. George's last-mouthed words, wait for me, echoed in her mind. Would he really come? How? Her father had clearly prepared for everything. Her phone had been confiscated, the landline cut off. Willow drew back the curtains and saw 2 bodyguards patrolling the courtyard below. Her father truly meant to keep her prisoner. From the bathroom came the sound of running water. Willow sat up, alarmed, and pushed open the door. The bathtub was already filled with steaming water. Rose petals floating on the surface. Scented candles and bath salts were arranged neatly at the side. What was this supposed to mean? First force, then comfort. Willow, may I come in? Her mother's voice came gently from outside the door. Willow opened it. Her mother stood there holding a tea tray, a worried smile on her face. After 3 months apart, the lines at the corners of her eyes were deeper, but she was still elegant, still composed, her pearl earrings glinting softly in the light. Mom. Willow stepped aside to let her in. Did father send you to persuade me? Her mother set down the tray and sighed softly. I came to see my daughter. She smoothed Willow's hair with a tender hand. 3 months, and not a single phone call. Willow's eyes burned. I'm sorry. Silly child. Her mother sat with her on the edge of the bed. Your father is truly angry this time, but also truly desperate. The company's situation is worse than you imagine. Willow frowned. How bad? Very bad. Her mother lowered her voice. If the Ito family's funds don't come through, next month we won't even be able to pay the employee salaries. Willow gasped. The Liu Corporation was worth billions. How could it have fallen so far? How? Her mother shook her head. Your father has been too aggressive these years. Layer upon layer of leverage. Project upon project. It looked glamorous on the surface, but inside, riddled with holes. Willow remembered George's words about financial fraud. So George was telling the truth. My father really falsified project progress reports. Her mother's expression grew complicated. That boy George is sharper than we thought. She hesitated. Yes, he does have evidence against your father. Southwest HE really got close to me just for revenge. Willow's voice quivered. Her mother gave her a long, meaningful look. What do you think? Willow recalled George's eyes. Those secret photographs. His confession in the storm. No, he's not that kind of man. Then trust your judgment. Her mother stood. Take a hot bath. I'll have them bring dinner to you. After her mother left, Willow sank into the bathtub, her mind a storm. What kind of man was George, really? A calm facade hiding a calculating avenger, or a man who truly loved her? Forced to wrestle with her father's schemes, the more she thought, the more tangled her thoughts became. Finally, she slipped beneath the water, letting the heat drown out the noise in her head. Dinner was a spread of her old favorites, foie gras, steak, creamy mushroom soup. But tonight everything tasted bland. She chewed mechanically, her eyes fixed on the darkening sky beyond the window. At 9 o'clock, her father finally appeared. He stood at the doorway in a sharp suit, a file in hand. Have you thought it through? He said without preamble. Makoto will be here for dinner tomorrow. You'd better behave yourself. Willow set down her fork. Dad, Does the company really need the Ito family that badly? Pablo's face darkened. That's not your concern. But if what George said is true, if the financial fraud comes to light, her father slammed the table. Shut up. That little brat knows nothing. His father was the same, arrogant, reckless. And what happened? Bankrupt. Jumped off a building. Willow's eyes widened. What? George's father killed himself? Her father's expression hardened, as if he realized he'd said too much. Enough. Just behave tomorrow. Makoto is no worse than George. You'll like him. Willow clenched her fists. I will not marry a stranger. Her father sneered. It's not up to you. If you try running again, I'll make sure George rots in prison. Fraud carries at least 10 years, and that's not even counting the threats he made against me. A chill ran through Willow's body. He meant it. He was fully capable of doing it. Get some rest. Her father turned to leave. The stylist will arrive at 10 tomorrow morning. The door locked again behind him. Willow stood at the window, staring at the moonlit garden. 3 months ago, she had slipped away through there. Now, guards patrolled every 15 minutes, and security cameras covered every angle. She lay in bed, tossing and turning. Where was George now? Was he also locked away? How would he answer her father's threats? At some point she drifted into sleep. In her dreams, George's face haunted her, sometimes smiling tenderly, sometimes cold and calculating. The next morning, a knock woke her. A maid delivered breakfast and a brand new Chanel suit. Master says Miss should wear this today. The stylist will arrive at 10. Willow ate mechanically, her mind racing. She had to find a way to reach George, or at least figure out what had happened to him. But how to slip past her father's net? At 10 sharp, the stylist arrived with 2 assistants. For the next 3 hours Willow was treated like a doll. Skincare, makeup, hair, manicure. By the end, the reflection in the mirror glowed with flawless elegance, but she looked like nothing more than a polished mannequin. The stylist admired his work. Miss, you look stunning. Young Master Ito is sure to be pleased. Willow resisted the urge to roll her eyes. At 3 o'clock, the butler informed her that the guest had arrived. Her father summoned her to the drawing room. She took a deep breath, smoothing her skirt. This performance, she had to play it well, at least for now. In the drawing room, her father was chatting happily with a young man. His back was to the door, broad shoulders filling out a tailored suit. At the sound of her footsteps, he turned. Willow nearly screamed. Standing beside her father was none other than the man she had seen in Clearwater Town, the one who had claimed to be a private detective. Willow, come, meet Makoto, her father said with a broad smile. Makoto extended his hand with perfect politeness. An honor to finally meet you, Miss Liu. Willow stiffly shook his hand, her mind a storm. What was going on? How had the so-called detective become Makoto? Unless, young Master Ito has just returned from England, her father said proudly, beaming at the two of them. He studied architecture at Cambridge, same as George, their alumni. Willow nearly choked on her own breath. Alumni? That's too much of a coincidence. Unless, she studied Makoto carefully. His suit was impeccable, but his mannerisms felt a little rehearsed. His gaze flicking to the door every so often as if waiting for something. He asked smoothly, do you enjoy traveling? Miss Liu, I hear you've been to many places. Not that many. Willow answered cautiously. Mostly Europe and Southeast Asia. Ah, Southeast Asia, he exclaimed, a little too theatrically. My favorite is Singapore. So clean and orderly. Don't you agree? Singapore? Willow's heart skipped. George had told her about his job offer in Singapore. Yes, I like Singapore very much, she replied carefully, especially around Marina Bay. Makoto's eyes lit up. Ah, the Marina Bay Sands. That infinity pool is just, ahem. Her father coughed sharply, cutting him off. Young Master Ito, why don't we take a walk in the garden? Willow loves the roses there. Willow was almost certain now, this Makoto was a fake, most likely arranged by George, but her father seemed oblivious. What exactly was happening here? In the garden, while her father stepped aside to take a phone call, Willow lowered her voice. Who are you really? Makoto blinked innocently. Why, your father's future son-in-law. Of course. Drop the act. Willow hissed. You were the private detective in Clearwater Town, weren't you? He smiled. Miss Liu has an excellent memory, but I'd prefer if you remembered me as who I am now. George sent you, didn't he? Shoo. Makoto pressed a finger to his lips. Your father's coming back. The rest of tea time was torture. Her father was obviously delighted with Makoto, praising his education, his pedigree, his supposed business acumen, and Makoto, in turn, kept slipping in references to Singapore, little breadcrumbs of information clearly meant for her. By dinner, Willow couldn't hold back anymore. Young Master Ito, you said you and George were alumni. The dining room fell silent. Her father's glare was sharp as a blade. Yes, Makoto replied calmly, though we weren't close. He was a few years ahead of me. Is that so? Willow set down her knife and fork. Then do you know where he is now? Willow, her father barked furiously, But Makoto only smiled faintly. I heard he's been preparing to open his own firm, if I'm not mistaken, in Singapore. Her father's face twisted with rage. Young Master Ito, enough of this irrelevant chatter. Of course, Mr. Liu. Makoto nodded obediently, but under the table. He gave Willow's foot a light kick. After dinner, her father insisted that Willow walk Makoto to the door. The two moved down the long corridor, bodyguards trailing at a distance. Tell George, Willow muttered under her breath. I've had enough of these games. Makoto's smile never faltered. He asked me to tell you, 72 hours. What does that mean? In 72 hours, everything will be resolved, he said with a meaningful glint in his eyes. Please be patient. Don't do anything rash. Willow frowned. And if I do? Then he'll be very hurt. Makoto opened the car door. After all, he loves you that much. Watching his car disappear down the drive, Willow trembled. What was this? George sending someone to impersonate her suitor? Was this his grand plan, or another elaborate trick? Back in her room, she found her mother sitting on the bed. Met young Master Ito? Her mother asked lightly. Willow gave a cold laugh. Don't pretend, Mom. That wasn't Makoto. Her mother's expression didn't flicker. Oh, then who was it? George's man. Willow locked eyes with her. You knew, didn't you? Her mother rose and walked to the window. Your father has made too many enemies over the years, she said softly, including the real Makoto. Willow's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, Makoto isn't coming. Her mother turned back, a mysterious smile curving her lips. There's another performance tomorrow. Rest well. When her mother left, Willow was more confused than ever. Her mother was clearly part of something, part of George's plan. Yet her father was completely oblivious. Still lost in his fantasy of saving the company through marriage, she lay awake, replaying Makoto's words. 72 hours. What was George planning? Why was her mother helping him? The next morning, the house erupted in chaos. From the servants she overheard that Makoto had gone missing. The real Ito Corporation had called, insisting their heir was still abroad, with no plans to return anytime soon. Willow nearly burst out laughing. George's move had been ruthless, leaving her father humiliated. But what came next? By noon, the shock escalated. The Securities Commission had launched a surprise raid on Liu Group headquarters, seizing financial records. Before rushing off to the company, her father barked orders that Willow's guards be doubled. She was not to step beyond her room. At the window, Willow watched his car speed away. Now she understood George's plan. He wasn't just saving her, he was dismantling her father's control piece by piece. The fraud evidence had finally been unleashed. But what did 72 hours mean? What was supposed to happen in 3 days? Should she sit quietly and wait, or, that evening, her mother slipped into her room, handing her a phone. George told me to give you this. Only one number stored. Use it if it's urgent. Willow clutched the phone, her heart pounding. Mom, what are you all planning? To give you freedom, her mother said simply. But you must cooperate. How? By waiting. Willow nearly screamed. Wait until when? Her mother's voice carried a deeper meaning. Wait until your father has no time left to control you. It won't be long. After she left, Willow switched on the phone. The contact list contained only one number, marked with a single letter, M. She hesitated, but didn't dial. If this was a crucial piece of George's plan, she couldn't risk disrupting it too soon. By the third morning, the tension in the house was palpable. Her father hadn't returned all night. The company was clearly in crisis. The financial news on TV confirmed it. Liu Group under investigation for fraud. Stock price plunges 50%. The screen showed her father surrounded by reporters, his face dark with fury. Then it struck her. This was what George had meant by 72 hours. 3 days. Enough to bring a corporate empire crashing down from within. At noon, her mother burst into the room. It's time. Your father's been summoned for questioning by the Securities Commission. He won't be back until tonight. She handed Willow a bag. Inside were cash, a passport, and a set of car keys. There's a car waiting in the garage. Willow stared, stunned. You want me to run away now? Not to run, her mother corrected gently. To go find the one you love. Tears welled in Willow's eyes. Mom, go. Her mother embraced her tightly. George is waiting. Willow changed into the plain clothes her mother had prepared, slipped on a baseball cap and mask. Guided by her mother, she took the servant's staircase down to the garage. There it was, an inconspicuous gray sedan. Engine ready. Remember, her mother whispered one last time. Whatever happens, don't run away again. Face it. Willow hugged her fiercely, then slid into the driver's seat. As the car rolled out of the Liu estate, she didn't look back. This time, she wasn't fleeing from something, she was driving toward something. The GPS was already set to a destination, Clearwater Town. Would George really be there, waiting for her, or was another twist waiting? Willow didn't know. But for the first time, the unknown didn't frighten her, because now she understood. True freedom wasn't an escape, it was in having the courage to choose her own path. The car merged onto the highway. Willow pressed harder on the accelerator. 72 hours were up. The game was about to end. Chapter 9. Clearwater Town was quieter than Willow remembered. She parked the car at the old street corner and walked toward George's studio. Night had already fallen, and the town's lights were sparse and dim, with only a few shops still open. Passing Sam's Cafe, she noticed a closed for business sign on the door and the windows completely dark. The little studio building was just as dark. Willow stood at the door, her heart pounding. Her mother had said George would be waiting here, but clearly, he wasn't. She pulled out the spare key George had once given her and unlocked the door. The hinges creaked as it swung open, releasing a musty waft of dust. She fumbled for the switch, and as the light flickered on, she gasped. The studio was empty. The drafting table, the chairs, the kitchen utensils, gone. The design sketches once pinned on the wall had been stripped away, leaving pale square marks. Only the creaky staircase remained, groaning like it might collapse at any moment. "George?" Willow called softly. Her voice echoed in the hollow room. No answer. She climbed to the second floor. The bedroom too had been cleared out, even the mattress removed. Moonlight poured through bare windows, casting a cold silver glow across the floorboards. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the barren floor. Was she too late? Had George already left? Or was it all a lie? She pulled out the phone her mother had given her, staring at the single contact marked M. Her finger hovered over the call button. What if George had changed his mind? What if he had only ever used her as a tool against her father? And now that his revenge was complete, he had vanished. Bastard. Willow hurled the phone onto the floor, hugging her knees. How could she have been so foolish? Foolish enough to trust him again, to believe she had found love, to think that. The phone buzzed suddenly. Willow scrambled to snatch it up. The screen lit with the name M. She drew in a shaky breath and answered. "You're late." George's familiar teasing voice came through the line. Her nose stung as tears threatened. "Where are you? Turn around. Look outside the window." Willow rushed to the window. Across the street, a black SUV was parked with its headlights flashing twice. A tall figure leaned casually against it, phone to his ear. Even through the night and distance, Willow knew that silhouette. George. It was really him. "Come down," he said. "We've got to catch the last flight." Flight? To where? A city. Willow frowned. Why a city? George's low laugh carried through the line. "Because that's where our wedding venue is booked." She nearly dropped the phone. "What? Don't dawdle. Runaway bride." George hung up. Willow dashed down the stairs, practically flying out of the studio. George stood by the car, dressed in a sharp suit, hair slicked neatly back, looking every bit like a groom waiting for his bride. As Willow rushed toward him, he opened his arms wide, but she slammed to a stop a meter away, eyeing him up and down. "What the hell are you doing?" "Eloping," George said innocently. "Weren't you the one who came looking for me?" "I came to what?" He arched a brow. "To apologize, to confess, to beg me to marry you." Willow's cheeks burned. "Don't flatter yourself. I came to take back what's mine." "And what's that?" My dignity." She snapped through clenched teeth. "You and your fake Makoto made a fool out of me." George chuckled. "That was Luis, my college roommate. Pretty convincing, wasn't he? Your father didn't suspect a thing. My mother was in on it." "Of course." George swung the car door open. "Your mother-in-law is my best ally. Get in. I'll explain on the way." Willow hesitated, but finally slid into the passenger seat. The car smelled faintly of leather and mint, the dashboard glowing a soft blue. George started the engine and steered onto the highway leading out of town. "So," Willow broke the silence, "this was all your plan, to bring down my father's company and then marry his daughter?" George finished smoothly. "Exactly. That's your revenge." George shook his head. "Not revenge. A fair trade. Your father drove mine to ruin. I exposed his fraud. We're even." Willow's eyes widened. "My father drove your father 20 years ago." George said evenly. "My father was a small contractor. He refused to cut corners on one of Lou Group's projects. Your father framed him with debts he couldn't pay." His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "The day he jumped, I had just gotten home from school." Willow covered her mouth. "God. George, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't." George let out a bitter laugh. "Your father's very good at burying his filth. It took me years, even after university, to uncover the truth. So you did approach me for revenge." Willow's voice trembled. The car roared up the highway. George overtook a truck before answering. "At first, yes. But then what?" "Then I realized Pablo's daughter was nothing like her father." He glanced at her. "You're defiant, stubborn, but you're also kind and brave. You swapped champagne for grape juice at a gala because you knew driver Wang was allergic to alcohol. You funded that single mother's tuition and never signed your name. You even leaked evidence to one of your father's rivals when they were falsely accused." Willow gaped. "You? How do you know all that?" "I told you," George said with a small smile. "I know the real you, not the Lou heiress." "Willow." She turned to the window, staring at the blur of night rushing past. He had been watching her all along, not to control her, but to understand her. That wasn't surveillance. That was love. And now, she asked softly. Now that my father's empire has collapsed, and your revenge is complete, why do you still want to marry me? George didn't answer right away. The car glided onto the airport expressway, the terminal lights glittering ahead like stars. Because, he said at last, I've realized revenge is nothing compared to loving you. Willow's heart clenched, as if a warm hand had closed around it. She turned her head away quickly, hiding the tears burning her eyes. A city international airport was busier than Willow had imagined. George parked, pulled 2 suitcases from the trunk. You even packed my luggage? Willow asked in disbelief. Just the basics, George said, handing her a suitcase. Clothes in your size, skincare and lingerie you'll have to sort out yourself. Willow flipped it open. Inside were neatly folded outfits, a pair of flats, toiletries, and, her breath caught, a brand new novel by her favorite author. How did you know I like Elena Ferrante? You wrote your graduation thesis on her. George took her hand. Come on, time to board. Willow let him lead her through the crowded terminal. His hand was warm and steady, holding hers with just the right pressure, not so loose she'd slip away, not so tight she'd want to pull back. It felt like they had walked this way together for years. The boarding process was startlingly smooth. George seemed to have arranged everything in advance: check-in, security, boarding, all without waiting in line. By the time they sank into the spacious seats of first class, Willow couldn't hold back any longer. How long have you been planning this? George fastened his seatbelt. Since the day you ran from the wedding. Details. George. Details. Fine. He turned toward her. The moment you bolted from the ceremony, I confirmed my work offer in Singapore, sold the wedding house, shifted the funds to offshore accounts, and started gathering evidence of your father's fraud. And then you followed me to Clearwater Town. Not followed. Protected. He corrected gently. Your father sent at least 3 different teams after you. I misled them all. Willow thought of Makoto, Luis. Really? So you were always waiting for me? Not just waiting. George smiled and reached into his pocket. I was preparing this. Her heartbeat stumbled. Don't tell me. He flipped open a velvet box. Inside gleamed a unique ring, an oval blue diamond encircled by tiny white stones, like a flower in full bloom. I was supposed to give it to you at the wedding. George lifted it from the box. Now I'm making up for that. Willow's throat tightened as she stared at it. George, we need to talk. The plane's taking off. He clipped her belt, his voice low. We'll talk after we land. During the 2-hour flight, Willow pretended to sleep, but her mind spun endlessly. George loved her, of that she was sure now. But did he love her, the girl behind the Liu family name, or the rebellious heiress he had constructed in his heart? And what about her? Did she love George, or was she just moved by his relentless devotion? By the time they landed in a city, it was past midnight. George hailed a cab and gave the driver an address Willow knew all too well, the Shangri-La Hotel, the very place their wedding had been scheduled. You booked a room? She asked. More than that. George's smile turned secretive. The hotel lobby glowed with polished marble and golden light. At the front desk, the clerk immediately handed George a key card with a deferential bow. Mr. Wong, she said, everything has been prepared exactly as you requested. The elevator carried them straight to the penthouse suite. George swiped the key card, opened the door, and gestured for Willow to go in first. She stepped inside, and froze. The entire suite had been transformed into a wedding scene: flowers, candlelight, champagne, and in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, a small arch adorned with white roses. This is our wedding, George said, closing the door. Or more precisely, the one we never got to have. Willow turned to him. George, we can't just. I know what you're thinking. George walked closer. You think this is too fast, too reckless. You're not sure if I love you, or the version of you I imagined. Her eyes widened. You, how did you? Because I know you. His hands cupped her face. The way I know you sing in the shower. The way you hate anything with coconut. The way you fear pigeons but admire eagles. And, he leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper at her ear. The way you secretly love it when I kiss your neck. Willow shivered. That's not fair. You've studied me for years, and you only need to ask your heart. George stepped back. So tell me, Willow, do you love me? The room was so silent that only their breathing could be heard. Willow looked at George's face, bathed in candlelight, and suddenly knew her answer. This arrogant, brilliant, stubborn man had loved her in his own strange way, by knowing her, waiting for her, refusing to give up on her. And she, perhaps from the very moment she ran from the altar, had loved him too. Yes, she whispered, then louder, I love you, George. His eyes lit up, but the next words out of his mouth nearly made her punch him. Good. But before marriage, we'll need a medical check. I'm not taking second-hand goods. What? Willow's hair nearly stood on end. George, you bastard. He burst out laughing, catching her as she lunged at him. I'm kidding. God, you're so cute when you're mad. Let me go. I'm taking back what I said. Too late. He held her tighter. You already confessed. Now you're stuck with me. She glared up at him. You planned this all along. From beginning to end. He grinned smugly and admitted, you enjoyed every bit. Willow suddenly rose on her toes and kissed him. The move surprised George, but only for a second before he deepened the kiss. By the time they broke apart, both were breathless. So that's a yes to marriage? He asked. Willow smirked. Ask me tomorrow morning. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. George stirred awake, only to find the bed empty. Willow. He sat up, scanning the suite. No answer. The bathroom door was open. No one inside. The living area was silent. On the coffee table lay a single note. Went to pick up the wedding dress. Be there at noon sharp. Don't be late. Groom. The runaway bride. George stared at the note, and then he laughed. This time, he was sure she'd come. 11:50 a.m. Shangri-La Hotel Ballroom. George, dressed in a black tuxedo, stood beneath the flower arch. The seats held only a few close guests. Willow's mother, Maria, Luis, and a handful of George's friends. Pablo was absent. Luis whispered, you really think she'll show? Last time, she'll come. George checked his watch. 7 minutes left. The seconds ticked by. At 11:59, the doors were still shut. His jaw tightened, though his eyes remained fixed on them. Mrs. Liu tried to reassure him. Don't worry, Willow isn't the same as before. At exactly 12 o'clock, the double doors flew open. Everyone turned, and the doorway stood empty. George's heart sank. Had he been tricked again? Just as he was about to step down to check, music suddenly swelled. The side door of the hall opened, and there came Willow, radiant in white. Not the traditional bridal entrance, no father on her arm, no solemn steps. Instead, she ran lightly down the aisle, her gown flying behind her, her face lit with a brilliant smile. George stood rooted as she drew closer, his heartbeat pounding like it might burst from his chest. This time, she wasn't being forced toward marriage, she was running into love. 30 seconds late, Willow panted as she stopped in front of him. Traffic. George laughed. Worth the wait. The officiant cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today. Willow barely heard the rest. All she saw was George's eyes, brimming with pride and love. When the words finally came, you may kiss the bride, George leaned in and whispered at her ear. This time, you can't run. Willow smiled and pressed her lips to his. Who said I was running? 3 years later, Marina Bay, Singapore. Willow stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing out at the glittering skyline behind her. George was coaxing their 6-month-old daughter to sleep. She's finally out, he whispered, lowering the baby gently into the crib. Harder than negotiating 10 clients. Willow turned with a laugh. So even the great architect George admits defeat. Only to the two of you. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? Our first meeting. She leaned back into him. Was it really at the graduation exhibition? As real as it gets. He kissed the crown of her head. You wore a red dress. Nearly fell by the fountain. I caught you. She turned to face him. Then why didn't you chase me sooner? Because I was just a broke graduate back then. George chuckled. Looking back, though, going straight after you might have been easier than the long way around. He drew in a deep breath. He could almost hear again the roar of 300 guests that night. The extravagant wedding Pablo had paid millions for, and the bride who ran. Your father, George said, pulling a mock terrified face. Again. Didn't he just come over last month? He's more in love with you than with me these days. Willow rolled her eyes. George, come look at this new project. George, check this contract for me. George laughed aloud. Well, I am his favorite son-in-law. Shut up. She swatted him with a cushion. Go check the baby monitor. I think it's out of signal. As George headed toward the nursery, he called back. Oh, and remind your dad about that project file he mentioned. You tell him yourself. That'd look too eager. He winked. I'm the noble son-in-law, remember? Not here for money, only for love. Willow hurled the cushion at him. Hypocrite. George caught it with ease, grinning like a mischievous boy. Outside, Singapore's skyline sparkled like a field of stars. Inside, a small family wrote their own quiet story of happiness. From runaway bride to cherished wife, from defiance to devotion. This time, no one was running anymore.